Hello everyone. Welcome to Zen and Fanfics. Today we are featuring What If Hero Deku Had Warpgate Quirk. The story is written by MidoriIkaru on Wattpad. Before we start, please like and subscribe for more content. Now, let's dive into the story. The apartment was quiet except for the running kitchen sink. Izuku Midoriya stood there washing dishes, humming to herself while thinking about dinner. The place was small, a little cluttered, but warm. She kept glancing at the clock. "He better get home soon," she muttered with a little smile. He said he wanted something warm tonight. Maybe curry. He likes curry. Or I could make. A heavy knock hit the front door. Izuku looked up. Who? That's not a Boro. His knock was always fast and impatient. This one sounded tired. Slow. Wrong. She wiped her hands and walked over, opening the door. Shota, she said, surprised. What are you doing here? Where's a Boro? Did you guys get off? Izuku looked nothing like himself. His eyes were red, his face strained, and he couldn't meet her gaze. Izuku, he said quietly. Can I come in? Sure. She stepped aside, confused. Shota, what's going on? You're freaking me out. He walked in but didn't sit. He didn't even take off his shoes. He stood there, stiff, like he wasn't sure how to breathe. Shota. Izuku asked again, voice shaking a little. Where is a Boro? Izuku's throat worked as he tried to form words. There was an incident today, he said. A villain. Okay, she cut in fast. So where is he? Is he at the hospital? Just tell me where he is. I'll go. Izuku, Shota, just tell me where he is. Izuku closed his eyes for a second, then forced himself to say it. He didn't make it. A Boro's dead. Izuku stayed at him, frozen. Then everything hit her at once. No, she yelled so loud the windows rattled. No, you're lying. Izuku, don't say that, she screamed. Don't you say that about him. He left this morning. He said he'd be home for dinner. He said he'd text me. He promised me. Tears streamed down her face so quickly she couldn't even wipe them away. Her breathing broke apart, sharp and panicked. He promised Emmy, Shota, she sobbed. He promised me he'd come home. He wouldn't just. No. Izuku stepped toward her, hands lifted gently. Izuku, I'm so sorry. She slapped his hand away weakly, stumbling back. No, you're wrong. Where is he? Tell me where he is. Her legs buckled and she dropped to her knees, sobbing so hard her voice cracked. A Boro, she choked. A Boro, please come home. Please. Izuku knelt down quickly and wrapped his arms around her before she could collapse fully onto the floor. Izuku, I'm here, he said, his voice breaking. I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She shoved her face into his chest and screamed, raw and heartbroken. He can't be dead. He can't be. Izuku held her tighter as she shook violently, her sobs echoing through the tiny apartment. She grabbed onto his shirt with trembling hands, crying so hard she could barely breathe. Izuku's own tears fell as he whispered. He tried. Izuku, he really tried. But she couldn't hear anything through the sound of her own cries. She clung to him like she was drowning, yelling a Boro's name again and again until her voice broke completely. The apartment stayed filled with her sobbing while the sink ran in the background, and the warm dinner she hoped for never happened. Weeks passed, but the apartment still felt too quiet. Izuku tried to move through each day, but everything reminded her of a Boro, the empty chair at the table, the spare hero jacket draped over the couch, the unfinished mug he used to drink from. Some mornings she woke up reaching for him before remembering he wasn't there. She cried less loudly now, but she cried more often, in quiet moments when she thought no one would notice. Izuku, Yamada, and Nemurai had been checking on her constantly. They brought groceries, made dinner, cleaned the apartment when she was too tired to move. They never said you'll get over it, or you'll feel better soon. They just showed up, sat with her, and helped however they could. One morning, Izuku stood in the bathroom, staring at a small white pregnancy test in her shaking hands. 2 lines. Clear as day. Her breath hitched, and she sat down on the edge of the tub before her legs gave out. She covered her mouth with both hands, tears welling again. Not the same broken grief as before, but a new mix of shock, fear, and something warm she didn't know what to do with. "Oh, Oboro," she whispered. "You left me with this. You gave me this." The thought made her burst into tears again. But this time they were quieter, softer. Later that afternoon, she called Izawa and asked him to come over. He arrived with Yamada and Nimurai without even questioning why. "Inko," Izawa asked as soon as he stepped inside. "You okay? You sounded off on the phone." "Yeah, what's up?" Yamada added, his usual energy toned way down. Nimurai gently closed the door behind them. Inko stood in the living room, hands clasped together tightly. "I found something out this morning," she said. Her voice shook, and she tried to steady it. I'm PRGNNT." Yamada blinked hard. Nimurai's mouth fell open. Izawa actually froze mid-step. Inko's eyes filled, and her voice cracked as she continued. "It's Oboro's." Nimurai covered her mouth with both hands as tears pooled in her eyes. "Oh, Inko." Yamada stepped forward first, putting a warm hand on her shoulder. "You're not doing this alone, okay? You hear me?" "Absolutely not." Izawa let out a slow breath, the shock fading into something steadier. "We're here," he said simply. "Whatever you need. Anything." Nimurai nodded quickly, wiping her eyes. "We'll take shifts if we have to. Doctor visits, food, cleaning, whatever helps." Inko laughed weakly and cried at the same time, covering her face with her hands. "I don't know how to do this. I don't. I'm scared." Yamada gently pulled her into a hug. "You're allowed to be scared. But you're not alone." Izawa added from her side, quieter but firm. "Oboro would want us to help. So we will." Nimurai joined the hug too, squeezing her tight. "And that baby is going to be loved. So loved." Inko trembled in their arms. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, all of you." They didn't say anything more. They didn't need to. They just stayed with her in the quiet living room, holding onto her as she cried softly, each of them silently promising to shoulder whatever came next. Transition. The years went by slowly, but they were full. Hard, yes, but full. Inko had her bad days, and sometimes the grief hit like it happened yesterday. But having Izuku in her arms always pulled her back. And she never had to face anything alone. Izawa, Yamada, and Nimurai made sure of that. They became her family just as much as Oboro had been. Now the living room was cluttered with toys, blankets, and an enthusiastic Hisashi Yamada dancing around like it was a live radio broadcast. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Baby Time," Yamada announced, waving a rattle like a microphone. Nimurai groaned. "Hisashi, stop screaming in the baby's face." "I'm not screaming," he said, immediately lowering his voice. "I'm projecting gently." Izawa sat on the floor nearby, legs crossed, watching without a single expression. He had a soft bottle in one hand and a tiny sock in the other, because Izuku tended to launch his socks into the void. Inko laughed tiredly from the couch. She was still in her pajamas even though. It was noon, hair tied in a messy bun. "You guys don't have to come over every weekend, you know." Nimurai snorted. "Oh, please. You think we'd miss baby Fogboy time?" "Absolutely not." Izuku, now 2 years old, stood in the middle of the room wearing a puffy All Might Odyssey with little yellow ears. His whole body still looked like swirling dark mist with glowing green eyes peeking through, exactly like Oboro's fog but with something brighter, warmer, more alive. Little tendrils of mist puffed from his hands each time he waved them. "Up!" Yamada cheered. "Look at him go. Look at this tiny hero." Izuku lifted his arms straight up like a little doll, wobbling on his feet. A puff of fog puffed from the hood. Izawa's eyes softened slightly. "Is doing that thing again." Inko smiled. "He wants someone to pick him up." Nimurai swooped in before anyone else could move. "Mine." She scooped Izuku up easily. "Come here, little wisp." Izuku let out a tiny humming noise, something he did when he was happy. His glowing eyes blinked slowly, and mist curled around her shoulders. Inko watched with a mix of adorableness and worry. "He still hasn't said anything yet," Not even a mama. Nemurai bounced him gently. Some kids talk late. It's fine. Yamada grinned. My nephew didn't talk until he was 4, and now you can't shut him up. Maybe Izuku's just saving up all his words for a dramatic entrance. Aizawa added, and with his quirk. It's not like anyone expects him to be typical. Izuku reached out toward Inko, hands wiggling, fog trailing from his fingers. Nemurai carried him over and set him gently in Inko's lap. He immediately curled into her like a little warm cloud. There you go, sweetheart, she whispered, kissing the top of his misty head. You okay? Izuku hummed again, glowing eyes closing slightly. A sock floated by Aizawa's leg. He sighed and picked it up. He threw another one. Yamada laughed so hard he nearly fell over. Our first fog-powered sock missile. Truly, a prodigy. Inko leaned her cheek on Izuku's head, stroking the soft mist where his hair should have been. You look just like your daddy, she whispered quietly into the fog. Only softer. Izuku nuzzled deeper into her chest, little hands gripping her shirt gently as the faint glow of his eyes shined against her. Transition. 2 years passed, and somehow the world adjusted to the little green-eyed kid who kept disappearing through walls, floors, furniture, and sometimes people's laundry baskets. At first, everyone thought Izuku had a mild telekinesis quirk like his mom. Then someone suggested maybe it was a mismaking thing because of the smoke that always drifted off him. Then another person swore he was just a weird child with bad timing who popped up in places he shouldn't be. But then Izuku opened a hole in the air. Just opened it, like pulling a curtain aside. A spinning patch of black fog, humming softly, sitting there like it had every right to exist in a living room on a Tuesday. And when a toy car rolled into it and launched out the other side at Mach 3, everyone finally understood. He wasn't making smoke. He was making portals. Warping-type quirks were rare. Rare in the hey, that kid might be government-level weird way. Rare in the people whisper in elevators way. Rare in the nobody wants to admit it out loud, but that's kind of scary way. And the strangest part was where he got it from. His dad had a cloud quirk. His mom had light telekinesis. Neither of those things should have produced a living fog portal that bent space like cheap paper. People tried to make sense of it. Maybe it was a mutation. Maybe Oboro's cloud quirk had some hidden aspect. Maybe his mom's telekinesis rewired something deeper. Maybe quirks just didn't care about making sense anymore. Honestly, the answer didn't matter. Because quirks were a beach. Everyone knew it. It became the default excuse for everything Izuku did. Did Izuku vanish from the playground? Quirks are a beach. Did he accidentally teleport a teacher's shoe into the faculty lounge? Quirks are a beach. Did he appear in the refrigerator when he meant to go to the bathroom? You guessed it. Inko tried to keep things organized, but eventually she gave up and taped little "do not teleport here" sticky notes around the apartment. Izuku ignored most of them because he was 5 and had no concept of personal boundaries, let alone dimensional stability. Still, for all the chaos, people couldn't help but adore him. He was quiet, polite, and always looked like he was thinking about 12 different things at once. And when he mis-teleported and got embarrassed, he puffed up with extra mist like a shy little kettle boiling over. 2 years in, the world hadn't fully figured him out, but it understood one thing. Izuku Midoriya wasn't just another kid with a quirk. He was something new, something rare, something with potential big enough to leave a mark on hero society, whether he wanted to or not. And he was only getting started. Years rolled forward, and before anyone could blink, Izuku was old enough for elementary school. Inko cried over how small he looked in the uniform. Aizawa pretended not to care but stared at him for a full minute like he might wrap the kid in capture cloth and take him home. Izuku didn't say a word that morning. He just held Inko's hand, mist gently drifting off him like always. He still didn't talk, but he wasn't silent either. He spoke in tiny hums, soft breaths, hand gestures, and those huge green eyes that could communicate entire paragraphs if you paid attention long enough. And people learned to pay attention. His classmates split into 2 groups almost immediately. Some adored him. He was calm. He didn't make trouble. He helped pick up crayons that rolled under desks. He opened portals to grab things that fell off shelves. He once warped a butterfly onto a girl's hand and made her cry happy tears. But kids are kids, and kids can be mean. And one kid in particular had a talent for being mean professionally. Katsuki Bakugo. Hot-tempered from day 1, loud from day 2, and armed with a quirk called Explosion by day 3. He figured out early that his palms could sweat nitroglycerine, and once he learned it went boom, he decided the world should bend around him. When he saw Izuku for the first time, covered in drifting smoke and blinking like a startled kitten, he sneered immediately. "What's with you, Deku?" He poked a finger right into Izuku's chest. "Why are you all foggy? You sick or something?" Izuku took a small step back, mist puffing off him like a scared little cloud. He didn't answer. He never answered. "Oh, right," Katsuki said with a snort. "You don't talk. Figures. Bet your quirk is just making you look weird." Izuku lowered his head, holding his backpack straps tight. Another kid defended him. "Leave him alone, Kakin. Izuku's cool." Bakugo scoffed. "Cool. He looks like a busted humidifier." Izuku didn't fight back. He just stood there, breathing quietly, letting the fog thicken around him. His quirk always responded to his moods. More mist when scared, less when calm. And Bakugo wasn't done. He walked circles around Izuku, cracking loud pops from his palms just to watch him flinch. "You better not explode or melt or whatever freaky mist things do. Don't get your smoke on my stuff." Izuku stared at his shoes and tried to step away, but mist slipped from his foot and opened a tiny portal under a nearby desk. A pencil fell into it and shot out across the room. Kids gasped. Bakugo pointed. "See? Total freak." But not everyone agreed. A girl clapped. A boy said, "Do it again." Someone whispered, "That's so awesome." Izuku blinked, confused. He hadn't meant to do anything. Katsuki scowled. And for the first time in his tiny life, Izuku realized something important. Some kids looked at him and saw a monster. Some kids looked at him and saw a miracle. He didn't know which one he was supposed to be yet. So he just did what he always did. Hunched his shoulders, breathed quietly, and let the mist drift around him like a soft shield. School had only just begun, and everything about his life was already complicated. But this was Izuku's normal now. He kept going, one quiet step at a time, mist following him wherever he went. Bakugo didn't let up. Not in first grade, not in fourth, not in seventh. It was like he made it his life mission to remind Izuku every day that he was weird, foggy, or Deku, which he used like an insult instead of a nickname. Izuku got used to walking the long way around school just to avoid him. He got used to holding his breath when he passed loud groups. He got used to shrinking into a quiet little fog ball whenever he felt eyes on him. By the time they hit Aldera Junior High, nothing had gotten better. It just got more complicated. Middle school was a bigger building with more hallways for Bakugo to corner him in. More kids to watch. More mist for him to accidentally leak when he got nervous. And Bakugo's explosions were stronger now. Loud. Sharp. Enough to leave scorch marks on walls if teachers weren't around. Izuku learned how to dodge. He learned how to warp just a few centimeters to avoid a shove. He learned to teleport his backpack away when Bakugo grabbed it. But he also learned how to hide things. He hid everything from the people who cared about him. He hid it from his mom, who already looked tired enough from raising him alone. He didn't want to add this to her shoulders. She'd worry too much. She'd blame herself. She might even go to the school, and that would only make Bakugo twice as angry. He hid it from Uncle Shota, who had a scary kind of quiet anger that could freeze a room. Aizawa would have stormed directly into Aldera and dragged someone out by the collar. Izuku didn't want that either. He hid it from his other uncle, Yamada, who would panic, make it into an emergency radio broadcast in his head, and then show up at school yelling, "No thanks." And he even hid it from Aunt Nemurai, who would absolutely destroy their entire class on instinct alone. So Izuku kept it all tucked away. When he got home with bruises, he made excuses. Tripped. Ran into a desk. Portal accident. Gym thing. Don't worry, I'm fine. He got good at smiling silently and shrugging like it didn't matter. Even when Bakugo blew up his notebook. Even when kids laughed at the green mist that puffed off him when he got anxious. even when someone shoved him into a locker and he had to warp out of the bottom because they jammed it shut. He still came home, took off his shoes neatly, and hugged his mom. "Rough day?" she sometimes asked. Izuku always shook his head. "No," she'd say with a soft smile. "All right, dinner will be ready soon." And he'd hum quietly, sit at the table, and pretend everything was normal. He got good at pretending. Too good, maybe, but that was how he survived. Breathing quietly, moving carefully, slipping through life like a ghost kid who didn't want anyone to worry. And Bakugo, he didn't stop. Not yet. Not for a long time. Transition. Kyokujiro showed up halfway through second year like she owned the place. Oh no, not owned. More like she refused to let the place own her. She stepped into Aldera with a ripped shirt that absolutely wasn't school-approved. A black skirt, fishnets, chunky boots, bracelet stacked on her wrist, and that tired look on her face that said, "Try me, I dare you." Her earjacks swung lazily at her sides, tapping against her legs every time she walked. The teacher introduced her, but Kyoka didn't bow politely like normal kids. She just lifted a hand in a lazy half-wave and muttered, "Yeah, sup?" Then she went straight to an empty seat, slouched, and unpacked a notebook covered in band logos no one else recognized. Everyone stared. Bakugo stared too. And that was the beginning of a whole new problem. At lunch, Bakugo stomped over to her table with that familiar angry swagger. "Hey, new girl, what's with the outfit? You blind or just stupid? We have a dress code." Kyoka didn't even look up. She just clicked her pen once and said, "Wow, loud and boring. Must be exhausting." The entire cafeteria froze. Bakugo's eye twitched. "What did you say, extra?" Kyoka finally looked at him. "Bod. I said you're loud. And boring. Want me to say it slower?" Kids around them made the kind of noises that meant things were about to get entertaining fast. Bakugo clenched his fists, small pops sparking. "You got a death wish." Kyoka raised one earjack like a warning sign. "Dude, don't yell at me. My ears work fine. Yours sound broken." Someone actually snorted behind them. Bakugo looked ready to blow up a table. Kyoka just shrugged, stuck one earjack in a notebook like she was about to doodle sound waves, and said, "Anyway, leave me alone. You're annoying." And that was that. Bakugo hated her immediately. Izuku watched the whole thing from across the cafeteria, and he was stunned. He had never seen someone talk to Bakugo like that. Ever. Not a teacher. Not a student. Not even an adult. Kyoka moved through the school like she had armor on. Uniform rules. Ignored. Teachers scolding her. She'd stare blankly until they got tired. Kids whispering about her earjacks. She'd flick one and make a high-pitched sound that shut everyone up. Izuku couldn't look away. She was strong in a way he'd never understood. Not physical strength, just confidence. She didn't shrink. She didn't let people walk all over her. She didn't flinch when someone yelled in her face. She was everything Izuku wasn't. And when she caught him staring one day, she just raised an eyebrow. He panicked and hid behind his mist like a startled cat. Kyoka blinked and whispered, "Whoa, okay, fog boy." Izuku's mist puffed even harder. She didn't tease him. She didn't laugh. She didn't call him weird. She just watched him for a moment, curious, then went back to her notebook, tapping her pen against the side of her boot. Izuku didn't understand why his chest felt warm, or why he kept watching her from the edges of classrooms, or why every time she rolled her eyes at Bakugo, he felt like the sun was coming out. All he knew was that Kyokujiro was tough, cool, sharp-tongued, and Izuku Midoriya was absolutely captivated. Transition. The next morning, the history teacher clapped her hands at the front of the room and announced a new project. A big one. A full grade. Partner required. 2 weeks to finish kind of deal. And then she said the words every middle schooler loved and hated at the same time. You may choose your partners. Instant chaos. Chairs screeched. Kids leaned across tables. Some yelled names. Some sprinted. Some pretended not to care but still looked around in panic. Izuku didn't move. He sat at his desk with his hands tucked under the table, watching the room swirl around him. His mist flickered in little nervous pulses, thin wisps rising from his shoulders. He already knew how this went. No one chose him. There were 2 reasons. and everyone knew them. 1. He didn't talk. Some kids said he couldn't, others said he wouldn't. Either way, it made group work harder. Or at least, that's what kids told themselves. 2. Partnering with him meant Bakugo's wrath. Even if Bakugo wasn't officially their dictator, he basically acted like it. Anyone who hung out with Izuku automatically became a target, and nobody wanted that smoke, literally. So the moment choose your partners left the teacher's mouth, kids did what kids do. They avoided him. Izuku watched desks pair up around him, laughter filling the room. 2 boys fist-bumped. 3 girls argued over who would work with who. Someone called, "Hey, over here." Another girl responded, "Shotgun Hannah." And Izuku sat alone. He didn't frown. He didn't panic. He didn't slump. He just quietly folded his notebook open, pretending to reread the project sheet. Mist drifted around his hair like a small cloud, but he kept his eyes down and his breathing steady. He was used to this. Across the room, Bakugo noticed him and smirked. "Look at that," he said loudly to his crew. "Deku's alone again. Shocking." He laughed, sharp and loud. Nobody wants a fog machine for a partner. His followers snickered on cue. Izuku stayed still, jaw tight. The mist around him thickened, but he held it in. He didn't want to cause a scene. He didn't want anyone to get dragged into Bakugo's orbit because of him. He just needed to wait until the teacher paired the leftovers. It'd be fine. It always was. He'd be put with whoever was left, and they'd work around him quietly. He'd deal with it. Then, a chair scraped. Someone stood up. Izuku didn't look up at first, thinking it was just more shuffling. But then a shadow fell over his desk. He glanced up slowly. Kyokujiro stood there with her hands in her pockets, looking down at him like she had already decided something. Her voice was flat as always. "You alone?" Izuku blinked. She tapped her earjack against her thigh. "You, want a partner or what?" Izuku's mist puffed so hard he accidentally made a baby portal appear under his chair. It fizzled and vanished immediately. Kyoka stayed at the little warp hole, then at him. "Cool," she said. Bakugo's grin died. His eyes widened like someone had just broken a rule he wrote himself. Kyoka noticed him glaring and rolled her eyes. She looked back at Izuku. "Well, yes or no?" Izuku nodded quickly. Too quickly, mist flaring around him like excited smoke. Kyoka smirked a little. "All right then. Move over. We're partners." Bakugo's palms popped angrily. Izuku's heart thudded. Kyoka pulled a chair up next to him like it was the most normal thing in the world. And just like that, Izuku Midoriya wasn't alone. Transition. Lunch was loud, messy, and the kind of chaotic that made Izuku want to melt into the floor. He always sat at the far corner of the cafeteria where the light was dimmer and the tables were usually empty. The mist around him stayed light, drifting lazily off his shoulders like he was permanently sitting in low fog. He unpacked his lunch quietly. Rice, tamagoyaki, and a juice box, then kept his eyes down. No one usually bothered him here, which is why he almost jumped when a tray dropped onto the table across from him. Kyokujiro dropped into the seat like she'd been doing this for years instead of literally one day. She stabbed her straw into her juice and took a sip without asking permission or checking if he even wanted company. "All right," she said, pointing at him with her straw. "History project. What are we thinking? Posters? Models? Something that won't make me want to die." Izuku blinked at her, eyes glowing a little brighter. Kyoka sighed. "Dude, you cannot communicate with me somehow." Izuku nodded very fast. "Good," she said. "We'll figure out the project later. Just don't dump the whole thing on me, or I'll stab you with my straw." Izuku puffed a nervous cloud of fog. Kyoka stared. "Okay, that's actually metal as hell." He tilted his head, confused. She waved a hand at him. "The mist thing. You're just sitting there looking like a ghost from a rock music video. It's cool." Izuku froze for a moment, then looked down. Mist trickled off his fingers. Kyoka leaned forward a little. "So, what's your quirk anyway?" "Mist-making. Teleporting. Summoning demon portals." Izuku lifted his hand and opened a tiny portal above it. A grape from his lunch dropped into it and popped out on the table beside her. Kyoka blinked. "Okay, Yeah, that settles it. Your quirk is awesome. Izuku shyly covered his face with fog. Kyoka snorted. Stop hiding, fog boy. Izuku's mist burst in surprise. Fog boy. He wasn't sure if he liked it or if he was embarrassed to death. Relax, she said, smirking. It's not an insult. It fits. You're all quiet and ghosty, and she waved a hand around him, foggy. Izuku hummed softly, the closest he ever got to laughing. Kyoka grinned. There it is. Thought I'd never get a reaction out of you. Of course, peace didn't last. A sharp bang hit the table beside them. Bakugo stood there, palms smoking, teeth clenched in a furious grin. Well, look at this, he barked. Deku actually got a partner. And Gyro of all people. Didn't think you liked losers. Kyoka slowly turned her head toward him, completely unbothered. Bite me. The entire table behind them went silent. Someone choked on their water. Izuku's mist shot straight up like a startled mushroom cloud. Bakugo blinked, caught off guard. What did you just? Kyoka cut him off. You heard me. Bite me. Or better yet, shut up. We're eating. Bakugo's hand lit with a crackling pop. You've got a death wish, freak. Kyoka rolled her eyes. Oh no, the loud boy with fireworks hands is mad at me. Whatever will I do? Izuku swallowed hard. His mist swirled around him in nervous circles. Kyoka noticed and jabbed a fry in Bakugo's direction. You're stressing out, fog boy. Back off. Bakugo looked at Izuku, then at her, then back again. His jaw tightened. This isn't over. Kyoka shrugged. It never is. Move. Bakugo stomped away, sparks flying with every step. Kyoka popped a fry into her mouth. What a toddler. Izuku stared at her like she'd just fought a dragon with a toothpick. She raised an eyebrow. What? You thought I was gonna let him yell at you? Izuku shook his head quickly. Good, she said, leaning back with a satisfied smirk. Because you're my partner now, fog boy. Anyone messes with you, they mess with me. Izuku didn't talk, but if he did, he probably would have said something like thank you. Instead, he let out a soft hum and a warm little puff of mist. Kyoka smiled. Yeah, she said. You're welcome. Gym class after lunch was always chaos, but today it was even worse. The gym teacher stood in the center of the court with a whistle in her mouth and actual fear in her eyes. All right, today we're doing dodgeball. Quirks allowed. Don't kill anyone. Half the class cheered. The other half quietly prepared their wills. Izuku stood in the back, fidgeting with his sleeves, mist curling around his legs. Kyoka nudged him with her elbow. You'll be fine, she muttered. Just don't teleport yourself into a wall. Izuku swallowed and nodded. Teams were chosen fast. Bakugo made sure he was on the opposite side of Izuku, glaring like he was preparing for war. The whistle blew. Everything happened at once. Ball flew through the air, kids screamed, explosions popped like fireworks, and the gym teacher prayed silently in the corner. Bakugo immediately charged a ball with a tiny blast and hurled it at Izuku like he wanted to blow his head off. Izuku vanished. Not a normal dodge. Just F-whip, gone in a blink. The ball sailed straight through a fog portal and came out behind Bakugo, hitting him in the back of the head so fast it knocked his hair loose. The room erupted. No way. Did you see that? What the hell? Kyoka froze, her jaw slightly open. She knew he could warp, but not like that. Izuku reappeared 10 feet away, blinking like he hadn't meant to do half of that. Bakugo snarled. You little... Another ball flew at Izuku. He opened a tiny gate and the ball zipped out of another portal twice as fast, drilling a kid from Bakugo's team square in the stomach. Holy CRP, someone yelled. Kyoka stared hard at the portals. Black fog swirling, clean openings slicing the air, exits placed with stupidly good accuracy. She crossed her arms. Okay, so fog boy's cracked. Good to know. Izuku kept moving, slipping around the cot in short teleports. Dodge, hop, flick, another portal. A ball flew at him, disappeared into the fog, and popped out near the ceiling, dropping onto an unsuspecting kid who screamed like he was hit by divine judgment. Kyoka watched everything with wide eyes. Izuku wasn't just using his quirk. He was dancing with it. Bakugo looked ready to explode himself into orbit. "Stop running and fight me." Izuku panicked and opened a portal directly under Bakugo's feet. Bakugo fell through it with a yell and dropped out of another gate 3 feet to the left, landing flat on his butt. The class howled. Kyoka actually laughed, a sharp, surprised sound. "Oh DMN. Fog boy, you insane." Izuku turned bright green around the edges from embarrassment. Bakugo grabbed another ball, fury burning off him in sparks. He sprinted toward Izuku. Izuku's instincts kicked in. Another portal. Another redirect. The ball fired back at Bakugo faster than he threw it. He dodged at the last second, veins popping on his forehead. The gym teacher finally snapped. "Bakugo, Midoriya, stop turning this into a war zone." Everyone froze. Izuku puffed mist. Bakugo growled. Kyoka whispered, "Totally worth it." When the teacher restarted the game, this time with a very strict warning, Kyoka walked over to Izuku. "Hey," she said, tapping his arm with an earjack. "No wonder you don't get caught by him. You warp like crazy." Izuku scratched the back of his neck shyly, mist floating up. Kyoka smirked. "You're like a ghost on caffeine." Izuku blinked rapidly. She crossed her arms. "I'm impressed. Seriously." Izuku's mist puffed around him in a warm swirl, his version of a smile. And for the first time in a long time, gym class didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt kind of fun. A transition. School finally let out, and Izuku practically floated out of the building on a cloud of exhaustion and leftover adrenaline. Gym class had been terrifying. And fun. Mostly terrifying. His mist still twitched around him like it wasn't sure if the danger had really passed. He hugged his backpack to his chest and headed down the walkway, mind drifting. He was thinking about portals. And homework. And maybe what soup his mom would make for dinner. Very normal thoughts. Then someone grabbed his shoulders from behind and yelled, "BOO." Izuku made a noise that was only describable as a dying kettle and launched straight upward, literally. A small portal bloomed under his feet in panic and popped him 2 feet into the air before dropping him back down on the sidewalk. His entire body was a puff of frantic mist, and Kyoka Gyro was on the ground laughing so hard she was wheezing. "Oh my god, Fog boy, your face." She slapped the ground. "I swear you nearly teleported into orbit." Izuku covered his face with both hands, emitting distressed fog squeaks. Kyoka wiped a tear from her eye. Sorry. I couldn't help it. You're so jumpy. It's fun." Izuku gave her the most offended, glowy-eyed stare he could manage. She grinned. Come on. Don't look at me like that. You are cute. Terrified, but cute." More mist puffed out. Izuku looked like a boiling teapot. Kyoka pushed herself to her feet and dusted off her skate. "Anyway, I'm heading out. You going home now?" Izuku nodded. "Cool. We're walking the same direction, so let's go together." She shrugged casually. "Might as well." Izuku hesitated, pointing at himself like me. "Walk with you?" "Yeah, you." Kyoka snorted. "Don't act like I asked you to donate a kidney. It's just a walk." Izuku's mist calmed a little, and he fell into step beside her. They walked down the quiet street, side by side. Kyoka kicked a rock along the sidewalk, humming a tune under her breath. Izuku stayed close but careful, making sure his mist didn't drift too far into her personal space. After a few minutes, she looked over. "So, where's your place?" Izuku pointed ahead. Kyoka followed the direction with her eyes, then blinked. "No way. Seriously." Izuku tilted his head. "You live in the Hirasawa apartment complex too." He nodded again. Kyoka huffed a laugh. "That's wild. I moved in last week. Mom works night shifts, so we're on the east side." Izuku pointed to the opposite end of the building. Kyoka smirked. "So we're neighbors. Just really far apart neighbors." He hummed softly in agreement. "Well," she said, stretching her arms behind her head as they reached the gate. "Guess you're stuck seeing me every morning now. And after school. Maybe weekends." Izuku almost tripped on air. Kyoka gave him a side-eye. "Relax. I don't bite." "A beat. Bakugo. Maybe. You. Probably not." Izuku puffed mist in flustered embarrassment, which only made Kyoka grin more. She nudged him lightly with her elbow. See you tomorrow, fub boy. Izuku gave a tiny nod, glowing eyes soft. Then they went their separate ways. Two kids who lived in the same building, walked the same street, and didn't know yet that this was the start of something big. Transition. Izuku slipped out of his shoes by the door and stepped into the warm, familiar smell of home. The apartment was cozy as always, soft lighting, clean counters, and the sound of something bubbling on the stove. Inko was humming while stirring a pot, her hair tied up with a little clip shaped like a sunflower. She turned when she heard him. Welcome home, sweetheart. How was school? Izuku froze for a second. Usually, he would shrug, or hum, or give a tiny hand gesture that meant it was fine. But today was different. His eyes lit up, literally glowing brighter, and he nodded quickly, hands moving in small excited motions. Little puffs of happy mist drifted from his shoulders. Inko blinked in surprise. Good. Really? That's wonderful, Izuku. He nodded again, softer this time but still clearly happy. His whole aura was calm and warm, the mist around him spreading like a gentle cloud instead of the anxious fog it usually turned into. Inko smiled, her heart melting at the sight. It had been so long since he came home looking genuinely light, relaxed, like his day didn't weigh on him. Well, then I'm glad. Maybe things are looking up, HM. Izuku hummed, the sound soft but cheerful. Inko returned to her cooking, but only for a moment before speaking again. Oh, I almost forgot. I met a very kind woman at work today. MidoriIkaru. She's lovely. Izuku blinked. Inko kept going, stirring the pot. Turns out she is a daughter around your age. Very polite girl, very cool style. Mika and I got along really well. Izuku tilted his head, curious. And, Inko said as she turned off the stove, I invited them over for dinner tonight. They should be here any minute. Izuku's fog stopped midair. His eyes widened slowly. Gyro. Kyoka Gyro. The girl who called him Fog Boy. The girl who shut down Bakugo with Bite Me. The girl who walked home with him. The girl who lived on the opposite side of the complex. He pointed at himself, confused and startled. Inko noticed. Yes, her daughter. Kyoka. I believe her name was. Do you know her? Izuku nodded so hard he nearly stumbled. Oh, that's wonderful. Inko clapped her hands. She seemed like such a nice girl. I thought it'd be good for you to have someone your age over. Izuku's mist swirled everywhere. Panic, excitement, disbelief all at once. Inko laughed softly. Izuku, sweetie, calm down. It's just dinner. The doorbell rang. Izuku nearly evaporated on the spot. Inko hurried to the door with a warm smile, wiping her hands on her apron. Izuku stayed in the hallway, frozen in place like a haunted coat rack, mist drifting in small, anxious curls around his head. She opened the door. Hello. You must be. Oh my gosh. Hi. Standing there was Kyoka, looking like she absolutely did not want to be at a dinner event, leaning slightly to one side with her hands shoved in her pockets. Next to her was MidoriIkaru, who looked like an older, softer version of her daughter. Same hairstyle, just neater. Same eyes, just warmer. Glasses, calmer energy. A near copy, just with a mom vibe and a cardigan. Mika bowed politely. Thank you so much for inviting us, Miss Midoriya. I hope we're not too early. Not at all. Please, please come in. Inko stepped aside quickly. Kyoka muttered, yo, and walked in with her usual slouch. Mika smiled at Izuku the second she spotted him. And this must be your son. Izuku, right? Izuku's mist puffed like someone had smacked a fog machine. He nodded quickly, glowing eyes soft but nervous. Is adorable, Mika said warmly. Kyoka stared at Izuku, eyebrows raised like she was trying not to laugh at how stiff he looked. Inko beamed, placing a gentle hand on Izuku's shoulder. He's been excited since he heard you two were coming. Izuku shot his mom a betrayed look. Mom, please. But Inko just giggled. Inside, the apartment was warm and cozy, and the smell of dinner filled the air. Mika's eyes softened as she stepped in. This is lovely, Inko. It really is. Thank you, Inko said, her voice bright. It's so nice to have guests. Izuku and I don't get many chances to host. Mika laughed lightly. Same here. With work and Kyoka's schedule, we barely sit down at all. It's been chaotic since the move. Inko nodded with full mom energy. Oh, I understand completely. But I'm glad you're here now. It already feels like we've known each other forever. Mika's face lit up with genuine warmth. It does, doesn't it? The two women slipped into conversation instantly, like old friends reuniting after years apart. They talk about the apartment building, grocery stores nearby, the school, Kyoka's transfer, Izuku's shyness, and a dozen other things in the span of 2 minutes. Izuku watched them from the side, quietly absorbing the scene. His mom was laughing. Mikajiro looked kind. The apartment felt brighter. The mood felt calm and safe. Kyoka stood beside him, leaning on the wall, tapping her boot lightly, pretending she wasn't listening but absolutely listening. Izuku's chest warmed. He loved seeing his mom happy. He loved seeing her talk without looking tired or lonely. He loved hearing her laugh so freely. He didn't know Mikajiro well yet, but she felt familiar in the same way Aunt Nemurai or Uncle Yamada did. Warm, solid, steady. Someone who fit into a room like she'd always been part of it. Kyoka yawned, tugging at her earjack. They're gonna talk for hours, she whispered to Izuku. Just warning you. Izuku hummed softly in agreement. Kyoka smirked. Hey, at least they get along. Izuku nodded again, mist curling at his feet. Yeah, they got along beautifully, and that made him happier than he could explain. The moms fell into their own little bubble almost instantly, laughing, swapping stories, comparing grocery prices, venting about work, and talking like they'd been best friends since childhood. At one point, Mika said something about a rude customer, and Inko nearly choked laughing. They were gone. Lost. Unreachable. Kyoka jabbed Izuku lightly with her elbow. Dude, they're gonna talk until morning. Let's get out of here. Izuku nodded fast and motioned for her to follow. They slipped quietly down the hall, past a laundry basket and a row of shoes lined up neatly. Izuku pushed open his bedroom door and stepped inside. Kyoka blinked. Okay, this is not what I expected. Izuku's room was tidy. Like, suspiciously tidy for a middle school boy. Bed made, shelves organized, everything in its place. A small desk, a stack of notebooks, a few floating wisps of mist drifting around, harmless and soft. And then there were the posters. All Might, more All Might, a couple of Ed Shot cutouts, and a tiny shrine-like corner of All Might merch arranged with perfect care. Kyoka crossed her arms. Wow, you're a full-on All Might nerd. Izuku blushed instantly, mist puffing around his face like embarrassed steam. But hey, she said, pointing at one of the Ed Shot posters. Good taste, hey. Ed Shot's my guy. Izuku tilted his head, curious. Kyoka grinned. What? His cool, quiet, sharp, quick, doesn't show off. Total ninja energy. Plus his hair. Killer. Izuku nodded slowly. He could respect that. Don't get me wrong, she added, walking closer to a big All Might poster. All Might's awesome too. Symbol of peace, big smile, big muscles, whatever, I get the hype. She leaned closer as if inspecting it. But it's too loud for me. Too sunshine. Izuku held his hands up and nodded like yeah. Fair. Mist swirling gently behind him. Kyoka turned around, raising an eyebrow. Let me guess. All Might's your number one. Izuku nodded again, but shyly, pressing his hands together. She snorted. Figures. You're all soft around the edges. Here's your vibe. Izuku blinked rapidly. Me. Soft. Kyoka smirked like she caught him off guard on purpose. Yeah, you. What? You think you're mysterious and broody. Please. You're like a friendly ghost. Izuku puffed a cloud in protest. Kyoka laughed. See? Friendly. He looked around awkwardly, then pointed at the Ed Shot shelf, offering it for her to check out. Oh, yeah. Now we're talking. She approached it with interest. Man, imagine having a quirk like his body-shredding, shape-shifting ninja stuff. Sick. Izuku's eyes glowed brighter with curiosity, and he opened a little portal above his palm. Just a tiny one, swirling quietly. Kyoka watched it and nodded. Yours is cooler, though. Izuku froze. Kyoka shrugged casually. What? It's true. You literally bend space. That's metal. Izuku stared at her, stunned and warm and foggy all at once. Then, a voice echoed faintly down the hall. Inko, do you have that recipe for, kids? Where'd Izuku go? Kyoka rolled her eyes. We should go before they come looking. Izuku nodded and motioned to the door. As they stepped out, Kyoka glanced back at his room one last time. Nice setup, Fog Boy, she said. Didn't expect it, but it suits you. Izuku's mist curled into a quiet, pleased swirl behind him, and the evening felt just a little brighter. A couple months passed, and everything changed in ways Izuku never expected. The Midoriyas and Gyros didn't just get along. They blended. Inko and Mika became those moms who texted each other recipes, complained about work together, swapped leftovers, and sometimes laughed so hard the neighbors knocked on the wall. They even started grocery shopping together on weekends. And Izuku, he wasn't alone anymore. Kyoka came over almost every other day, sometimes to hang out, sometimes to study, sometimes just to sit in his room, kick her boots against the floor, and talk about music while he listened quietly with those big glowing eyes. She'd never say it out loud, but she liked being in his calm little fog world. And Izuku, he lit up every time she arrived. He didn't talk, but he didn't have to. His whole aura changed around her. The mist softer, his movements more confident, his eyes brighter. He had a friend, a real one. And because Kyoka was Kyoka, she didn't let him stay timid. One afternoon, she dragged him outside to the complex courtyard. All right, Fog Boy, she said, hands on her hips. If you're gonna survive junior high in Bakugu's ego, you need training. Izuku blinked, confused. Kyoka tossed a pebble at him. You can teleport. You can literally bend space. You should be unstoppable, not a startled humidifier. Izuku puffed at that, mist swirling in offense. Kyoka smirked. Good. Now move. And so they began training. Nothing fancy at first, just movement drills. Portal there. Jump through. Now again. Faster. Izuku obeyed, opening a gate in front of him and vaulting through. He stumbled the first few attempts, landing on his hands and knees, fog swirling like a dizzy cloud. Kyoka crossed her arms. Not bad, but try shooting yourself out of it. Like a cannon. Izuku hesitated. She nodded encouragingly. You'll be fine. You're made of fog. Worst case, you poof. He raised a hand, mist swirling heavily as he opened a portal angled upward. He stepped in. FWIP. He blasted out the exit gate 20 feet away, landing in a full tumble across the grass. Kyoka clapped. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Izuku scrambled up, dizzy but excited, mist bouncing around him like static. They trained again the next day, and the next, and the next. Every session got crazier. Izuku learned how to shoot himself sideways, sliding across the courtyard like a fog bullet. He learned how to stop instantly, dropping portals under his feet to kill momentum. He learned how to redirect objects. Kyoka would throw ball at him, and he'd warp them to hit a tree or bounce behind her. She called it portal dodgeball training. He called it I hope I don't die. He learned how to combine jumps and shots, teleporting, launching, landing, spinning, then warping again. And Kyoka, she never stopped hyping him up. Faster, Fog Boy. That was sick. Do it again. No, wait. Don't explode. Okay, now do it again. Holy CRP, you're getting strong. Izuku grew sharper, more confident, more agile. His mist didn't jitter nervously anymore. It flowed with purpose. Even Mika noticed. He looks happier, she said one evening as she and Inko chatted while the kids trained outside. Inko nodded, smiling softly. He finally has a friend who understands him. And under the evening sky, Izuku teleported through 3 fast portals in a row and shot forward like a green-eyed missile, landing perfectly on his feet for the first time. Kyoka pumped a fist. Yes, that's what I've been waiting for. Fog Boy, You're killing it. Izuku glowed, literally and figuratively. He had a friend. He had support. He was improving. For the first time in his life, Izuku felt like he wasn't just surviving. He was growing. Izuku stood in the courtyard, mist curling around his arms as he stared at the far wall. Kyoka watched him stretch his fingers, fog pulsing in steady waves like he was focusing really, really hard. She raised an eyebrow. You look like you're about to do something stupid. Izuku turned his glowing eyes toward her. She corrected herself. Okay, something cool and stupid. He pointed at the wall, then tapped his chest, then made a punching motion that ended with a big whoosh of mist. Kyoka squinted. You're planning something with portals, aren't you? Izuku nodded once, excited mist sparking around his hair like a little fog storm. Kyoka sighed but stepped back anyway. Fine, but if you blow yourself up, I'm telling both our moms it was your idea. Izuku took a deep breath. He opened a portal in front of him, bigger than normal, swirling with thick, dark fog that spilled down like smoke from a furnace. The exit portal formed across the yard, floating just a little above the ground. Kyoka frowned. Fog boy, that one's huge. Izuku didn't respond. His eyes brightened, and he planted his feet firmly. Mist gathered around his arms like coiling clouds. He pulled his fist back. Kyoka's eyes widened. Wait, are you? Izuku punched forward. Phoom! His fist disappeared into the portal and blasted out the exit across the yard with 3 times the force. The air cracked like someone swung a battering ram. Dust exploded off the ground. A shockwave kicked up leaves and pebbles and made Kyoka's hair WHP back. The far wall shook. Izuku stumbled from the recoil, skidding back a foot, but stayed standing. Kyoka slapped both hands over her ears. What the? Izuku. He blinked at her innocently, a little puff of proud mist floating up. She pointed at the smoking dent in the wall. You can't just portal punch a building. Izuku flinched and waved his hands in apology, mist trembling nervously. Kyoka ran a hand through her hair, trying not to laugh. Okay. That was insane. You almost gave me a heart attack. She walked over to the wall and tapped the dent. This was you. Fog boy, you just punched something with portal physics. Izuku shuffled over, glowing eyes hopeful. Kyoka smirked. That was metal as hell. Izuku practically vibrated with misty excitement. So what was that, she asked. You got a name for it. Izuku tapped his chin, thinking, then pointed at the portal and made a punching gesture. Kyoka snapped her fingers. Warp gate. Smash. Izuku nodded fast. Yeah, she said, grinning, that fits. Izuku's mist swirled happily around him, glowing faint green like he had just discovered fire. Kyoka crossed her arms. All right, fog boy, we're adding that to training. But we're doing it smarter next time. Izuku nodded again, already thinking of how to make it better. Kyoka sighed, shaking her head. You're gonna break the planet one day, I swear. Izuku hummed softly, proud, and behind them, the portal dent in the wall still smoked gently, proof that Izuku Midoriya had just invented his first real technique. Izuku and Kyoka wrapped up training once the sun dipped low, both tired and sweaty but proud in that quiet way only kids with weird powers could be. Kyoka stretched her arms over her head. I'm starving. You want something sweet? Izuku nodded immediately. Mist puffed in agreement. They headed toward the little convenience store down the street. Kyoka grabbed a strawberry milk and a chocolate bar. Izuku picked out a melon bread and a jelly cup. They paid, walked out, and started heading back toward the apartment complex. Halfway there, Izuku tugged Kyoka's sleeve and pointed toward the nearby public restroom. Kyoka shrugged. Yeah, go ahead. I'll wait here. Izuku jogged off, leaving a faint trail of fog behind him. He wasn't gone long. Just a minute. 2 at most. When he pushed open the bathroom door and stepped back onto the sidewalk, he froze. Kyoka wasn't standing where he left her. Her drink was on the ground, spilled. Her chocolate bar lay crushed beside it. And about 20 feet away, 2 men were shoving a struggling Kyoka into a white van. One had his hand over her mouth, the other grabbing her by the arms. Kyoka kicked and fought, her earjacks whipping wildly. But one man yanked them and she cried out in pain. "Quit struggling, kid." One of them snapped as they shoved her inside and slammed the door. Izuku stood there for 1 second. Just one. His mind went completely blank. Then something inside him snapped. A violent burst of mist exploded off his body, flooding the street like a smoke bomb. His eyes glowed an almost blinding green, brighter than they ever had before. The van's tires squealed. It sped off, turning sharply onto the main road. Izuku didn't think. He didn't hesitate. He ran. Fog erupted around him as portals flickered and opened, one after another, rapid and unstable but fast. FWIP. He shot forward 20 feet. FWIP. Another warped him closer to the street. FWIP. He appeared at the intersection just in time to see the van's taillights disappearing down the road. His heart slammed against his ribs. His breath came in ragged bursts. Mist poured off him like a living storm. Kyoka was gone. Taken. And she was screaming inside that van. Izuku clenched his fist so hard his knuckles shook. A portal snapped open under his foot, launching him forward at full force. The wind ripped at his hair, at his clothes, at the fog around him. He didn't know where that van was going. He didn't know who those men were. He didn't know what he was running into. He only knew one thing. He wasn't letting Kyoka disappear. Not tonight. Not ever. And with a final burst of fog exploding behind him, Izuku Midoriya dove into another portal and gave chase. Inside the van, chaos was the only word that fit. Kyokujiro was not making this easy. The two men who grabbed her clearly thought she was going to be some quiet little middle school girl they could toss around like luggage. They were wrong. Kyoka fought like a wild cat trapped in a metal box. Her boots slammed into the wall. Her elbow cracked into a guy's nose. Her e-jacks whipped around and nearly jabbed one guy in the throat. "Hold her down," one man barked. "I'm trying." The other snapped, BLD running from his nose. "She's crazy." Kyoka tried to scream, but one of them grabbed her earjacks and yanked them hard enough to make her gasp in pain. She kicked back, connecting with a shin. "Oh, little brat. Give me the syringe," the other growled. "She won't calm down otherwise." Kyoka's eyes widened when she saw the needle. A sedative. A fast one. Probably meant to knock out someone twice her size. "Stay still," the man shouted. Kyoka did the exact opposite. She thrashed so hard the van actually shook. She rolled onto her stomach, twisted her arms free for a second, and nearly kicked the needle out of the guy's hand. He cursed, grabbing a fistful of her hair. "Stop moving. Let go of me." Kyoka snarled. Her voice cracked, half pain, half fury. "You creeps." Her earjacks swung wildly, one smacking the syringe and knocking it against the metal floor. The guy swore loudly. "DM it. She's too strong for a kid." Kyoka tried to wiggle free, but the other man pinned her wrist down with his knee. She hissed in pain, teeth clenched. "Hold her steady," the one with the syringe growled. "I'll get her this time." Kyoka twisted again, kicking him in the jaw so hard the syringe went flying across the van and clattered under his seat. "You little." She spat at his shoes. "I said let me go." She wasn't done. Kyoka jammed her head backward, headbutting the man behind her. He shouted, letting go of her long enough for her to try crawling toward the back door. She didn't get far. One of them grabbed her ankle and dragged her back. Kyoka screamed, kicking, scratching, trying anything. Panic clawed at her chest when she felt them pulling her earjacks again. Pain shot through her skull. "No, no. Let go." She fought so hard the van swerved on the road. "Knock her out already." "I can't." "She won't stop moving." Kyoka didn't intend to be brave. She was scared, terrified. Her breath came fast and shaky. Her arms hurt. Her earjacks burned. Tears stung her eyes from pain and panic. But she refused to stop. She refused to give up, because she knew Izuku had walked away for only a moment. And if she could keep fighting, he'd find her. He always did. The men were panicking, shouting over each other as Kyoka kept thrashing like her life depended on it. Because it did. "Hold her down." "I am." "Then why is she still moving?" That's when the big one in the corner finally snapped. He was quiet up until now, the type who watched instead of acted. Thick arms, scarred knuckles, the kind of face that always looked angry even when he wasn't. He stood up slowly. Kyoka froze for half a second as his skin began to shift, metal creeping up his arms, across his hands, covering his knuckles like armor. The metal groaned as it spread, sharp edges forming across his forearms. "Enough," he said, voice low and cold. He reached forward. Kyoka tried to scramble away. Too slow. His metal hand clamped around her throat and lifted her halfway off the floor. Her feet kicked wildly, struggling for balance as he pulled her body back into a chokehold. Kyoka clawed at his arm, but her nails scraped harmlessly against steel. "Stop fighting," he growled near her ear, breath disgusting and warm. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." His grin was the worst part, wide, twisted, sick with enjoyment. Kyoka gasped, kicking, trying to scream, but his grip crushed the sound out of her. Panic surged through her chest, her ejacs flailing uselessly against the van wall. "Got her," the metal man said proudly. "Bring the syringe." The others scrambled for it. Kyoka's vision blurred. Her lungs burned. Her heartbeat hammered in her ears. Her hand reached out, desperately, toward the van door. "Please, Izuku, please." The driver suddenly screamed. "What the?" The entire van jerked violently to the right. Tires screeched. The world outside lurched. Then, the van lifted off the ground. All four wheels. Every kidnapper in the back slammed into the walls. The metal man lost his footing just a little, enough for Kyoka to SCK in the smallest gasp of air. "What is happening?" someone shouted. The driver's voice cracked in terror. There's a hole in the road." Kyoka blinked through tears and pain. "A hole? No, not a hole. A portal." Before she could process it, the world twisted, and something yanked her backward. Not by force, not by hands, by fog. Dense, swirling fog grabbed around her waist like a hook of smoke and pulled. Kyoka felt the metal man's grip rip away as she was lifted off the van floor and dragged toward a swirling black mist tearing open behind her. "No, no. Get her back!" Someone screamed. Too late. The portal snapped shut the moment she passed through, and Kyoka fell straight into someone's arms. The world stopped. The noise stopped. The panic stopped. All she felt were warm arms wrapped around her, trembling. All she saw were glowing green eyes staring at her with pure fear and relief. Fog swirled everywhere around them, like a storm breathing heavy. "Izuku." He held her tight, arms locked like he was afraid she'd vanish again. Kyoka gasped, voice raw. "Fog boy." Izuku's mist burst violently, shaking with emotion. She grabbed his shirt, pulling herself closer, fingers digging in. "You found me," she whispered. Izuku didn't speak, but his whole body said everything. He was shaking, but he didn't let go. Izuku held Kyoka so tightly it felt like he was anchoring both of them to the ground. His fog surrounded them in thick waves, pulsing with the adrenaline still tearing through his body. Behind them, the air rippled. Izuku opened another portal, bigger than any he had ever made before, so dense with fog it looked like a storm cloud torn in half. The white van tumbled out of it. Bam! K-h-h-h. The vehicle slammed onto the empty stretch of road just ahead of them, crumpling like a soda can. Windows exploded outward. The metal man smashed into the roof. The others were thrown into the walls. The whole thing skidded across the concrete before coming to a brutal stop. If Izuku hadn't canceled their momentum before dropping them, they would have splattered on impact. Kyoka watched the wreck, her hand gripping Izuku's sleeve. You dropped them from the sky." Izuku shook his head fast. No, and pointed up. Kyoka followed his finger to the swirling remnants of a portal dissolving far above them. She swallowed. "Fog boy, how high were you?" Izuku held up all his fingers twice. 10,000 feet. He nodded nervously, mist trembling around him. Kyoka's eyes widened. "Holy, okay. You insane." Before Izuku could panic at that, sirens wailed in the distance. Blue and red lights flashed around the corner as police cruisers screeched onto the scene. Heroes followed right behind them, sprinting from nearby rooftops or leaping off moving vehicles. One of them landed dramatically in heels. Midnight. Her WHP cracked onto the ground as she marched forward, eyes sharp as knives. What in the world? Dispatch said there was a kidnapping and the suspects were airborne. Who? She stopped mid-sentence when she saw Izuku and Kyoka. Kyoka was shaking, throat bruised, breathing uneven. Izuku was pale, mist whipping around him like a storm, eyes wide and wild. Midnight's expression softened instantly. She dropped to one knee beside them. Hey, you two are okay now. You're safe. She glanced at Izuku's fog. You did good. Really good. Izuku let out a trembling breath, clinging to Kyoka's shoulder. His mist curled tightly around them both like a blanket. Another hero ran over to check the van. They are alive. Unconscious, but alive. The police were already shouting orders, securing the men, reading rights, dragging open doors. Kyoka leaned into Izuku, still shaking. Fog boy, you caught up. You actually caught up? Izuku's eyes lowered. He tapped his chest, then pointed down the road, then made a little circle motion, his new mobility trick. Kyoka blinked slowly. You used the portal slingshot thing to chase a moving van. Izuku nodded, embarrassed. She let out a choke laugh. Ew, ridiculous. Another tremor went through her. Izuku immediately pulled her tighter, mist softening around them. Midnight stood and called to the officers, I need paramedics for these two. Now. They are shaken up bad. Kyoka grabbed Izuku's hand before anyone could pull them apart. Don't you dare go anywhere, she muttered, her voice unsteady but firm. Izuku hummed softly, his version of I'm not leaving. Heroes swarmed the area. Police took statements. The kidnappers were hauled away. Reporters gathered across the street. Everything became noise. But Izuku didn't hear any of it. His world was Kyoka, shivering in his arms, her hand gripping his shirt like he was the only solid thing left, her breath shaky but alive. He had been terrified. He had run like he'd never run before. He had pushed his quirk farther than he ever had. He had dropped a van from the sky, and he'd do it again in a heartbeat. Kyoka leaned her forehead against his. Thanks, she whispered. For coming. Izuku's mist brushed gently around her like a promise. He'd come every time. The hours after the rescue blurred together under fluorescent lights. Izuku and Kyoka sat side by side on a long bench in the police station, wrapped in mylar blankets even though neither was cold. They were just overwhelmed. Izuku kept his mist low and soft so he wouldn't scare anyone. Kyoka leaned against his shoulder, still tired from the struggle and the panic and the adrenaline crash. Then the doors burst open. Izuku Midoriya for Izuku. Mika Gyro, Kyoka. Both moms sprinted inside like they were shot out of cannons. Inko nearly tripped over a chair. Mika didn't even bother closing the door behind her. In an instant, both kids were swept into warm, crushing hugs. Izuku disappeared under a wave of crying, shaking mother energy. Oh my goodness, Izuku, sweetheart, why didn't anyone call sooner? I was so scared. I didn't know. You poor thing, Izuku squeaked a little mist puff. Mika pulled Kyoka close, cupping her face. Are you hurt? Did they touch you? Did those creeps? Kyoka, talk to me. Kyoka groaned. Mom, air. I need air. Mika hugged her anyway. I'm never letting you walk home alone again. Inko echoed her immediately. Same. Izuku, you're grounded from danger for life. Izuku blinked. Grounded from danger. How does that even work? Before either boy or girl could explain anything, a calm voice cut through the chaos. Excuse me. Midoriya, Gyro. A tall man in a long coat approached them. He looked tired, but not the kind of tired that came from lack of sleep. The kind that came from seeing strange things every single day. His badge hung from his belt. I'm Detective Naomasa Tsukochi, he said with a slight bow. I wanted to speak with the two kids who stopped the suspects. Mika blinked. Stop the... They were armed men. Heroes had to force their car open. Naomasa nodded politely. Yes, but they weren't stopped by heroes. He turned his attention to Izuku. They were stopped by him. Izuku stiffened, eyes wide, mist curling nervously. Kyoka folded her arms. DMN right he did. The detective knelt slightly to meet Izuku's height. Young man. Those men were wanted in 3 districts. Abductions, trafficking, assault. Closing in on them has taken us months. Izuku's breath caught. Mist twitched at his feet. You caught them in under 4 minutes. Kyoka elbowed him lightly. Fob boy's terrifying when he wants to be. Izuku shook his head fast. He hadn't meant to be terrifying. He'd just... Naomasa raised a hand gently. Relax, Midoriya. You didn't do anything wrong. In fact, you saved someone's life. Izuku swallowed and looked at Kyoka. Kyoka looked back. The detective smiled a little at the silent exchange. You have a ray quirk, a spatial warping type. Very powerful, and extremely difficult to control at your age. Inko tensed beside him. Is that going to be a problem? No, Naomasa said firmly. It's incredible, and it's good he used it to help someone. He gave Izuku's shoulder a reassuring pat. You did something brave today, Izuku. Something heroic. You should be proud. Izuku's eyes widened. Mist curled around him in a warm, glowing swirl. Proud. Kyoka smirked sideways. Hear that? Detective Big Shot says you're awesome. Izuku let out the tiniest, softest hum. Transition. A few days later, life tried to go back to normal. Or as normal as it could for 2 kids who'd survived a kidnapping and a sky portal rescue. The school didn't know what happened. Not officially. The police kept the details sealed because kids were involved. So rumors spread, but no one had the full story. No one except Kyoka, Izuku, and their families. But Bakugo knew something. And that was the problem. He stormed into class one morning with that smug, explosive swagger, slamming his bag onto his desk like always. But when he spotted Kyoka sitting quietly, earjacks loose over her shoulders, he smirked in that awful way he did when he smelled weakness. He stomped over to her desk. Oi, Gyro. Kyoka didn't look up at first. She already felt her stomach twist. Her throat still hurt from what happened, and sleep had been rough. She wasn't in the mood. Not today. Bakugo leaned in, too close. Where were you this week? Who? Heard he got snatched or some CRP. Kyoka stiffened. Her fingers curled into fists. Bakugo kept going. Loud. On purpose. What? Someone grabbed you and you just let it happen. Pathetic. Bet you Skria. Shut up. Kyoka muttered. He got louder. What? Speak up. Did they grab your stupid headphone things? Pull on him. Bet you cried like, stop, she said louder, voice shaking. Shut up, Bakugo. He grinned wider, cruel. Oh, what's wrong? Sensitive. Something happened to your Bakugo. Izuku's voice wasn't there, but his presence was. Mist slid under desks, under chairs, along the floor like silent fog creeping into a battlefield. Izuku stood up from his seat. The entire room went still. Bakugo turned, annoyed. What, Deku? You got something to... Izuku didn't yell. He didn't hum. He didn't even blink. He opened a portal, right under Bakugo's feet. Bakugo had half a second to scream. What Deku? Before he disappeared. The exit portal opened next to the classroom window. F-whip, whoosh, crash. Bakugo flew straight out the open window, doing a perfect accidental swan dive into the courtyard koi pond. The class screamed. Someone yelled, Holy SH. Another kid shouted. Midoriya just yeeted Bakugo out the window. A huge splash echoed from outside. Bakugo erupted from the pond covered in lily pads, mud, and koi fish smacking him in the face. Deku. I'm gonna, blurble, WH, the fish, get these things off me. Izuku didn't move. His mist curled around him like a silent warning. The class stared at him in absolute shock. Kyoka rubbed her eyes, wiping the tears that had been gathering, and then another leaked out, but this one was from sheer disbelief. She whispered, Fob boy, you threw him into a pond. Izuku shrugged like yeah, and Kyoka clamped a hand over her mouth and snorted. Holy CRP. You insane. Izuku gave her a soft nod, almost a bow, like you're safe now. Kyoka's face warmed. Her earjacks curled slightly inward. Bakugo's angry splashing outside grew louder. Izuku calmly sat back down, mist swirling peacefully. Bakugo didn't stomp back into the classroom to fight, because he was too busy screaming at koi fish biting his sleeves. The weeks after the koi pond incident were different. In the best way, Izuku and Kyoka didn't just become friends, they became close. Like, finish each other's homework, walk to school together, train every other day, eat snacks on the roof, kind of close. Kyoka talked more around him. Izuku talked more around her. His hums were louder, his gestures quicker, and the mist that used to hide him now drifted softly like a comfort blanket whenever she stood beside him. They sat together at lunch. They walked home in sync. Their moms swapped recipes and gossiped like seasoned veterans. And the apartment complex. It noticed. One afternoon, Mika and Inko were sitting at the table, drinking tea while the kids played card games in the living room. Kyoka was pretending to look bored, though she was clearly enjoying herself. Izuku hovered beside her, watching her shuffle cards with the intensity of a scientist observing a new species. Mika leaned over to Inko with a smirk. "They're adorable." Inko giggled behind her hand. "Right, like something out of a slice of life drama." Kyoka flicked an earjack. "I can't hear you, Mom." Mika waved dismissively. "Good. You should know how cute you two are." Izuku froze mid-mist. Kyoka's face turned about 10 shades darker. Mom," she snapped, kicking lightly at Mika's chair leg. Inko nodded enthusiastically. "You make such a balanced pair. Izuku so quiet and sweet, and Kyoka so confident and lively." Izuku puffed a cloud so thick it covered half the coffee table. Kyoka dragged her hand down her face. "Oh my God, please stop." Mika grinned. "I'm just saying, if they ever became a couple, MOM." Izuku nearly combusted into mist. The fog swirled around him in frantic circles, like a tiny storm of embarrassment. Inko laughed brightly. "I think it's precious." Kyoka tossed one of the cards at her mom's head. Izuku hid behind his own hands, glowing eyes peeking through his fingers. Eventually the moms calmed down, a little. But every time they looked at the two kids sitting together, Kyoka leaning into Izuku's mist without fear, Izuku hovering protectively close, they shared a knowing smile. And honestly, the kids didn't run away from each other afterward. If anything, they sat a little closer. They laughed a bit more. Izuku let his mist brush over Kyoka's shoulder like a shy hug. Kyoka bumped her knee against his like a quiet, "Hey, I'm here." It was safe to say they were becoming something strong. Something real. The quiet fog boy and the punk rock girl. A pair that made everyone who saw them smile, whether they liked it or not. Transition. A year slipped by faster than either of them expected. Their final year at Aldera Junior High hit like a brick to the face. Kyoka changed the most. She walked into third year looking different. Sharper jawline, stronger legs, more confident shoulders, hair styled cleaner, piercings adjusted, outfits edgier. The girl went full punk rock glow up. Fishnets, boots, chain belt, and that don't mess with me face that sent first year scrambling. People noticed. Teachers noticed. Even Bakugo shut up for like 3 seconds the first time he saw her. Kyoka didn't say much about the changes. She just shrugged and said, "PBRTY hit. Whatever." But Izuku definitely noticed. His eyes glowed a little brighter every time he looked at her, even if he tried to play it off with nervous mist fluffing around him. And Izuku, well, he got taller, like 3 inches. That's it. Everything else. Same fog boy. Same glowing eyes. Same comfy shirts. Same red sneakers. Same gentle mist drifting behind him like he lived in his own weather system. Kyoka would bump his shoulder and go, "Wow, look at you, skyscraper," even though she was still shorter by barely anything. He'd puff mist in embarrassment. She always smirked. Their lives settled into a strange, perfect rhythm. Training after school. Homework together. Walking home in sync. Music nights in Kyoka's room. Movie nights in Izuku's. Parents gossiping in the kitchen. Bakugo grumbling every time he saw them happy. They became impossible to separate. And the closer they got to graduation from Aldera, the more one word kept coming up. UA. The hero school. The dream. the place where kids didn't just train, they became professionals. Kyoka pretended she wasn't nervous. Izuku pretended he wasn't terrified. But when they sat on the rooftop one afternoon, breeze blowing, Kyoka leaning against the railing with her boot on the ledge, she nudged Izuku's arm lightly. "You applying to UA, right?" Izuku nodded. "Good," she said, "because I'm not going without you." Izuku's mist puffed hard, like he'd swallowed a smoke bomb, and Kyoka laughed, elbowing him. "I mean it," she added, voice softer. "We've been training together for years. You saved my life. I'm not letting some other school steal you. We're doing this together." Izuku looked at her, glowing eyes wide. Kyoka met his stare with that confident half-smirk. "Heroes come in duos all the time, and we're a good one." Izuku nodded slowly, hands clasped tightly, mist drifting with warmth instead of nervousness. Kyoka leaned against his shoulder, not dramatically, not shyly, just comfortably. "So," she said, gaze fixed on the horizon, "UA High School. Hero course. You and me." Izuku hummed softly. Together. It felt right. They didn't know what UA would throw at them. The tests, the villains, the challenges, the insanity. But they knew one thing for sure. Fogboy and Punk Rock Queen were taking on the world side by side. Izuku went still for half a second, then leaned in too. Their lips met, soft, warm, awkward in the most perfect way. Izuku's mist surged upward in a bright, glowing burst, curling around both of them like a gentle storm held close. Kyoka slid her hand up to his shoulder, pulling him even nearer. Izuku's hands hovered at her waist before he finally placed them there, hesitant but sure. It lasted just long enough to feel like the world around them fell away. When they pulled back, Kyoka smirked, cheeks faintly pink. "So, we're dating now." Izuku nodded fast, mist flicking in excitement. "Good," she said, brushing a thumb over his shirt. "Because I really didn't want anyone else beating me to you." Izuku hummed softly, leaning his forehead against hers. They started walking again, this time hand in hand, fingers intertwined, fog swirling between them like it finally knew where it belonged. The last day of junior high ended not with a goodbye, but with a beginning. Transition. Izuku and Kyoka got back to the Midoriya apartment a little after 4. The place was quiet, lights off, shoes missing by the door. A note on the fridge said, "Out grocery shopping with Mika. Back later. Love you, Blackheart." Kyoka snorted. Of course they're together. They're like a sitcom duo now. Izuku shrugged, mist drifting lazily around his shoulders. They kicked off their shoes and headed to his room. It felt comfortable in the way only a familiar space could. Neat shelves, posters, and that soft ambient mist that always hovered when he was relaxed. Kyoka plopped down on his bed, pulling out her phone. "All right, Fob boy, let's put on something good. None of your sad hero-os." She flicked her earjacks toward his speaker. "We're doing rock today." Izuku smiled with his eyes and nodded. Music started playing. Loud guitars, steady drums, Kyoka silently mouthing the lyrics while tapping her boots on the floor. Izuku sat beside her, listening quietly, fob pulsing with the beat like a living equalizer. After a few songs, Kyoka leaned back on her hands. The room was dim, the late sun leaking through the blinds and strips. Izuku looked peaceful, glowing eyes soft, outline blurred with mist. Kyoka nudged his shoulder. "Hey." Izuku turned, just a small tilt of the head. She studied him a moment. "Still feels unreal," she said. "Us. Today. Everything." Izuku hummed quietly. Kyoka rolled her eyes a bit. Yeah, you don't talk. I get it. But I kinda like you're quiet." His mist flared just a little. She smirked. "And I kinda wanna kiss you again." Izuku blinked slowly, the closest he came to a gasp, and Kyoka leaned in. This kiss was slower, warmer, less nervous and more "we're really doing this." Izuku kissed back gently, mist curling around them. Then Kyoka pulled back with a startled noise. "What the?" Izuku froze. She stared at him, then touched her mouth. "Dude, you didn't tell me your tongue was." He puffed a cloud of flustered fog, eyes glowing like headlights. Kyoka leaned in again, squinting at him. Izuku, open your mouth. He hesitated, then obeyed a little, just enough to show a long, oddly flexible tongue. Too long for a normal human. Smooth and quick, with a faint fork shape at the end. And his canines, a little longer, sharper, almost fang-like. Kyoka blinked. Izuku covered his mouth with both hands, mortified. Kyoka stared for 3 full seconds before saying, deadpan, that's kinda metal. Izuku peeked over his hands, confused. She smirked. You've been holding out on me, fog boy. Snake tongue. Fangs. You're basically half reptile. Why didn't you say anything? He tapped his chest, then made a curling motion with his hands, then pointed outward, trying to explain. Kyoka nodded along slowly. Mutation quirk stuff. Something in the family. Izuku nodded. She raised an eyebrow. Mom sighed. He nodded again. Kyoka leaned back, thinking, well, I guess it makes sense. Your cousin having a snake quirk and all. Izuku's eyes widened. She guessed it perfectly. Kyoka shrugged. I pay attention. She scooted closer, tugged his shirt, and kissed him again. Slower, testing, curious. He kissed back, still a little embarrassed, still letting the mist curl gently around her legs. When they pulled apart, she smirked. Your tongue's weird, she said, poking his cheek. But kinda cool. Izuku puffed warm mist, cheeks glowing. Kyoka flicked an earjack, plugging it gently against his chest so she could hear his heartbeat. Relax. I like you. Snake quirks, fog quirks, fangs, whatever. Izuku melted slightly, leaning into her. Kyoka rested her head on his shoulder as the music played. Neither of them noticed the time. Neither of them cared that their moms could walk in any minute. It was just them, Fogboy and Punk Girl, closer than ever. The next 10 months rolled in fast and loud, but Izuku and Kyoka hit them head-on. They knew UA's entrance exam was coming. 10 months. That meant 10 months of grinding, training, studying, and getting stronger than they'd ever been. Between all that training, they found time for dates too. Nothing wild, just them being them. A walk under the streetlights after dinner, sharing taiyaki at the pier, listening to music together on the rooftop until midnight. Kyoka dragging Izuku to a record shop and making him listen to her favorite bands. Izuku teleporting them onto the top of a hill to watch the sunset because the bus was late. They didn't brag about any of it. They didn't even talk about it much. They just liked being together. And Izuku wasn't training alone anymore. Aizawa got involved. Izuku wanted to be a hero who worked both day and night. Someone who could fill gaps in the schedule and move unseen if needed. Aizawa didn't comment on the ambition. He just folded his sleeping bag and said, fine, show me what you've got. Training with him was brutal. Silent movement drills, stealth approaches, quick takedowns, fog control, portal precision, jump timing, situational escapes. Aizawa didn't go easy on him. He didn't believe in easy. Izuku learned how to stop his fog from giving him away, how to mask his presence, how to reappear without sound. He discovered something new, something Aizawa hadn't expected. Izuku could use microportals to blink several inches at a time, making his footsteps vanish. Shadow step. He used tiny portals to skip the parts where his feet touched the ground. No sound, no air displacement, no hint that someone was even there. Aizawa raised an eyebrow the first time Izuku pulled it off. That, he said bluntly, is terrifying. Keep it. Izuku glowed with pride. Meanwhile, Bakugo kept trying to pick fights. Every time he saw Izuku in the hallway or on the street, he barked the same lines. Deku, I'm not done with you. You think you're hot stuff now. Fight me, BSTRD. Come on. But Izuku wasn't that anxious little fog boy anymore. When Bakugo yelled, Izuku just blinked at him, glowing eyes half-lidded, mist swirling calmly. If Bakugo got too close, Izuku would shadow step a foot to the left and watch him grab empty air. Kyoka nearly choked the first time Izuku did it. Bakugo lunged again. Izuku slipped sideways through a thin portal and popped up behind him without a sound. Bakugo spun. Don't run from me. Izuku tilted his head, unimpressed. Kyoka crossed her arms and bit her lip. Izuku didn't fight. He didn't even look worried. He just existed past Bakugo's reach now, in a place the explosive boy couldn't touch. Bakugo roared in frustration. Kyoka whispered under her breath, "Holy siapi, that's hot." Izuku turned pink-green and puffed mist. Their training only got crazier after that. Kyoka sharpened her own skills: agility, rhythm-based combat, shockwave manipulation with her earjacks. Izuku refined his portals, his speed, his striking techniques, and the new shadow step. They sparred together. They ran drills together. They pushed each other past their limits again and again. By the time the 9th month rolled around, they weren't middle schoolers anymore. They were two future heroes sharpening themselves into weapons. Together. Transition. A couple more months slipped by, and the progress they made was ridiculous. Izuku's punches hit harder now, not because he was stronger, but because he had finally figured out how to weaponize his quirk during strikes. He would open a tiny portal an inch or two ahead of his fist, slip his arm through it, and punch from a different angle entirely. The distance boost alone multiplied his impact. His reach was unpredictable, his timing sharper, and his ability to redirect his own momentum made him a nightmare to fight. A simple jab could come from behind someone. A hook could change angles mid-swing. A straight punch could travel through 3 microportals before landing. Aizawa watched one of these new strikes during training and muttered, "Whoever ends up fighting you is going to hate their life." Izuku puffed a shine mist cloud in response. Kyoka leveled up too, in a way that actually shocked everyone. Her earphone jacks weren't just flexible tools anymore. Training with Aizawa and some help from present MIC made her learn how to channel vibrations sharper and faster, turning her earjacks into piercing weapons. When she concentrated, those things could stab through a sheet of metal like she was poking a straw through soft bread. She tested it on one of Aizawa's capture cloth anchor points. The earjack slid right through the metal ring. Aizawa stayed at the hole, then at Kyoka. "Don't aim those at me." She smirked. "No promises." Izuku's mist swirled in admiration. But not everything was going great. Izuku started noticing something off. At first he thought he was imagining it. Someone staring at him from across the street, a figure lingering behind a corner, an adult leaning on a lamppost a little too long. He'd glance over, and they'd vanish into the crowd. The first time it happened, he thought it was nerves. The second time, he chalked it up to coincidence. The third time, when he caught a blurry reflection in a window and realized someone was walking behind him for several blocks, he teleported away the second he turned a corner. He didn't want to freak Kyoka out, so he didn't mention it right away. But after the 5th time, after he saw a man pretending to check his phone while clearly tracking him, he knew something was wrong. One evening, after training, Izuku sat at the table with Inko, Aizawa, present MIC, and Mika. Kyoka sat beside him, arms crossed, foot tapping fast against the floor. She already knew something was bothering him. Izuku raised his hands uncertainly, then pointed outside, made a walking gesture, and pinched his fingers together to mimic watching. Aizawa's eyes narrowed immediately. "You're being tailed." Izuku nodded, mist rising nervously. Present MIC looked worried for once. "Kiddo, how long has this been happening?" Izuku tapped his fingers 5 times. Kyoka's jaw clenched. 5 times. "Why didn't you tell me?" Izuku puffed an apologetic swirl of mist. Mika leaned forward, voice calm. "What do they look like?" Izuku mimed a grown man, wearing plain clothes, then traced a line down his sleeve like a badge tucked away. Aizawa caught on instantly. "Government type. Commission or police." Inko's face went pale. "Why would they follow my son? He hasn't done anything wrong." Aizawa exhaled slowly. "He saved a girl, stopped a kidnapping, and displayed a high-level warping quirk. That's enough attention for every surveillance unit within 3 prefectures." Kyoka scowled. "So what? They are spying on him. That's messed up." Present MIC crossed his arms. "They shouldn't be doing that without saying something." Aizawa tapped the table with his finger. "We'll handle it. I'll make some calls. But Izuku, if you see them again, you warp home immediately. No hesitation." Izuku nodded quickly. Kyoka elbowed him. "And you tell us. All of us." Izuku nodded again, more slowly, looking guilty. Inko placed a hand on his, voice gentle but firm. You're not alone in this. Not anymore. Aizawa didn't waste time. The moment Izuku finished explaining, he stood up from the table, walked into the hallway, and pulled out his phone. Kyoka strained her earjacks to listen, but he glared at her until she sighed and retracted them. Still, everyone heard the name he said. Nezu, pick up. It's important. The line clicked almost instantly, followed by the calm, too cheerful voice of a creature who absolutely should not sound that friendly. Ah, Shota. Good evening. What's the emergency? Aizawa kept his voice low, but the tension in his shoulders said everything. I have reason to believe Izuku Midoriya is being tailed. Hero Commission or law enforcement are possibilities, but we can't rule out villain groups either. He's been watched on multiple occasions. A pause. A long one. Then Nezu's tone changed completely. Lighter on the surface, sharper underneath. I see, and you trust the boy's judgment. I trust him, and I trust Gyro, Aizawa replied. And I don't like the pattern. Footsteps echoed as Nezu moved somewhere on his end. Papers shuffled. Bring the family to you, Nezu said without hesitation. Immediately. Until we identify the threat. I want them on campus. Aizawa pinched the bridge of his nose. I was hoping you'd say that. Oh, Shota, Nezu chuckled darkly. If someone is observing a spatial distortion quirk user with high growth potential, that means someone is planning something. And I refuse to give them a chance. Aizawa grimaced. So it could be villains. It could be many things, Nezu corrected. But heroes don't stalk children in alleys. Aizawa's jaw tightened. Nezu continued. Initiate the protocol. Aizawa sighed. Operation Dorm Family. Yes, a fitting name, Nezu said cheerfully. The Midoriyas will move into UA until further notice. We'll assign rooms, reinforce security, and handle any surveillance concerns discreetly. Bring the gyros into the loop as well, in case this extends beyond Izuku. Aizawa nodded to himself. I'll arrange it tonight. Nezu paused before ending the call, tone gentle for once. Shota, keep the boy close, and keep him calm. If someone is watching him, it means they are waiting for an opportunity. Aizawa's eyes hardened. They are not getting one. The call ended. Aizawa returned to the living room, and everyone straightened instantly. Izuku's fog tensed like a living creature sensing trouble. Kyoka leaned forward. Well, what did Rat Principal say? Aizawa stuffed his hands in his pockets. Pack your things. Wait, what? Inko blinked. Shota, what do you mean? Aizawa took a slow breath. You're moving. All of you. To UA. Izuku's eyes widened, mist blooming out in shock. Mika frowned. You mean like living on campus? Aizawa nodded. Dorms. Top security. Cameras everywhere. Underground shelters. Trusted staff. You'll be safer there than anywhere else. Inko covered her mouth, overwhelmed. Is it really that serious? Aizawa crouched down to Izuku's level, gaze firm. We can't rule out villains. Not anymore. Kyoka's fist tightened. So they were following him on purpose, Aizawa nodded. And we're not letting them get a second chance. Izuku swallowed hard, mist trembling at his feet. Aizawa placed a hand on his shoulder. This isn't your fault, but it's our job to protect you. Kyoka leaned into Izuku, bumping his arm. Looks like you're gonna be living at UA before the rest of us. Izuku gave a shaky puff of fog, half nervous, half reassured. Operation Dorm Family was happening. The Midoriyas were moving to UA. And if someone out there wanted Izuku Midoriya, they were about to find out they'd picked the wrong kid to mess with. Aizawa's car rolled through the tall security gates of UA High School, the world outside dropping away the moment they passed the barrier. The campus stretched out like a small city, wide roads, clean stone paths, training fields in the distance, and buildings that looked more like corporate towers than a school. Inko stayed out the window, stunned. It's enormous. Izuku sat quietly in the back seat, glowing eyes fixed on everything at once. The air here felt different. He could feel it in his fog, denser, steadier, like the space itself was reinforced. Safe. Watched. Protected. Aizawa didn't take the main road. He turned down a back route instead, quieter and shaded by trees, until rows of dorm buildings came into view. They were tall, clean, and new, each marked with bold lettering. He slowed and pulled into a spot in front of one building in particular. 1A Alliance. Inko leaned forward. Alliance. Aizawa shut off the engine. Nezu's idea. He likes symbolism. They stepped out of the car. Izuku's mist drifted low and cautious, curling around his ankles as he looked up at the dorm. It felt strange, standing here before he'd even taken the entrance exam. Like peeking behind the curtain too early. Aizawa led them inside and up the elevator. It climbed higher than Inko expected, higher than the other dorm floors. When the doors opened, they stepped into a quiet, private hallway with only one door at the end. Aizawa unlocked it. The penthouse opened into a wide, sunlit living space. Large windows wrapped around the room, overlooking most of the campus. The ceilings were high, the rooms clean and modern, but warm, not sterile. There was a kitchen, a living area, a bedroom for Inko, and a separate room clearly meant for Izuku. Inko covered her mouth. This is too much. Izuku stood still, mist slowly rising in soft spirals as he took it all in. Aizawa scratched the back of his neck. Nezu said it was practical. Practical. Inko echoed. He shrugged. Top floor means fewer access points. Easier surveillance. Better containment if something goes wrong. And, he added flatly, your son bends space. Nezu prefers to keep that elevated. Izuku blinked. Inko sighed, half nervous, half relieved. So that's the vague answer. Aizawa nodded. That's all you're getting. He walked them through the space, pointing out reinforced walls, discreet cameras, emergency shutters, and a balcony sealed with invisible barriers. Everything screamed secure without being oppressive. This will be home until further notice, Aizawa said. Once the school year starts, nothing changes for you, Inko. Izuku attends classes only if he passes the exam. Until then, training continues. Quietly. Izuku nodded, mist-dipping in agreement. Aizawa paused near the door. When UA starts, Gyro will move into the dorms with the others who pass. Izuku's eyes flicked up instantly. She'll be in 1A if she makes it, Aizawa added. Same building. Different floor. Izuku's fog warmed noticeably. Inko smiled at that, some of the tension finally leaving her shoulders. Aizawa checked his watch. Settle in. I'll be around. If anything feels off, even a little, you tell me. Izuku nodded again. Firmer this time. As Aizawa left them alone, Izuku stepped closer to the window and looked out over UA High School, the place where everything was about to begin. Not yet a student, not yet a hero, but closer than he'd ever been. Transition. The penthouse slowly filled with the sounds of living. Boxes slid across the floor, lids popped open, clothes unfolded, books stacked, familiar little pieces of home finding their places in a space that still felt too big and too new. Izuku used his quirk without even thinking about it. Small portals opening beside boxes so items could slip directly onto shelves, stacks of folded shirts appearing neatly in drawers without him needing to cross the room. Inko laughed softly as she watched him. You've gotten so good at that. I barely even notice when you do it anymore. Izuku glanced back at her, mist drifting lazily around his shoulders, and gave a small hum that meant thanks. He reached out, opened another portal, and gently placed a framed photo on the counter beside her. It was an old picture. Oboro, smiling wide, goggles crooked, arms slung around a younger Inko. The kind of smile that made it impossible not to smile back. Inko paused when she saw it. Oh, she said quietly. Izuku stood beside her, eyes glowing softly as he looked at the photo too. His mist slowed, settling like calm air after a storm. They stayed like that for a moment, just standing in the sunlight, the massive campus visible through the windows beyond. You know, Inko said at last, voice gentle, if Oboro were here, he would be losing his mind right now. Izuku tilted his head slightly. He'd be bragging to everyone, she continued, smiling through the ache. telling strangers at the grocery store, "That's my kid. He's going to UA. He's going to be a hero." Izuku's mist puffed faintly, warm and bright. Inko reached out and rested a hand on his arm. "You're practically guaranteed a seat in the hero course, Izuku. Not because of your quirk, though it's incredible, but because of who you are. How hard you work. How you protect people." Izuku looked down, then back up, eyes shining. She squeezed his arm. "He would be so proud of you. So proud." Izuku swallowed. His mist trembled for just a second before settling again, thicker around his chest like it was holding something precious and fragile inside. He raised his hand slowly and gestured, pointing to himself, then upward, then forward. "The future. What comes next?" Inko nodded, understanding him perfectly. "It's okay to be scared," she said. "Big dreams are scary, but you don't have to carry them alone. You never have." Izuku stepped closer and leaned into her, resting his head lightly against her shoulder. His mist curled around them both, soft and protective. Inko wrapped her arms around him. "No matter how strong you get, no matter how far you go, you'll always be my sweet boy." Izuku hummed quietly, the sound full and steady. Transition. Across the street from UA's towering gates, the woman stood still, hands tucked into the pockets of her coat. The evening light caught the glass of the buildings and turned them into mirrors, reflecting a campus that was sealed tight and very much awake. Cameras tracked the perimeter in quiet arcs. Berries hummed faintly beneath the pavement. She watched the dorms for a long moment. The top floors. The windows that didn't belong to students yet. Then she turned away and lifted a small, unmarked phone. "It's a no-go," she said calmly. "Targets fully embedded. High security. Eyes everywhere." The line crackled once before a voice answered, smooth, confident, and unsettlingly warm. "That's quite all right," the voice said. "I expected as much." She frowned slightly. "You're not concerned?" "On the contrary," the voice replied, amused. "I'm pleased. UA is predictable. Predictability is useful." She shifted her weight, glancing back at the gates. "We won't get another chance like this once the year starts." A soft chuckle came through the phone. "You won't need one. Fall back. Cleanly. No traces." There was a pause. Then the woman asked, "And the contingency?" "The contingency is already in motion," the voice said. "The school year is about to begin." She stiffened. "You mean?" "Yes," the voice cut in gently. "Our other asset will be attending Class 1A close proximity. Natural cover. No suspicion." Her grip tightened on the phone. "You're confident?" "I'm certain," the voice replied, unshaken. Children notice nothing when they believe they're safe. Heroes even less so. Silence stretched between them. "Stand down," the voice finished. "Observe. Learn. We have time." The call ended. The woman slipped the phone back into her pocket and walked away without looking back. Behind her, the gates of UA closed with a low, final sound. Several months passed, and the day finally came. Izuku stepped into the exam hall wearing his training clothes, sleeves pulled down, fog kept tight and controlled around his shoulders. The room was huge, rows and rows of desks stretching out beneath bright lights, packed with applicants from all over. Some whispered nervously. Some cracked their knuckles. Some looked far too confident for their own good. Izuku quietly took his seat. He didn't fidget. He didn't look around. He didn't leak fog. He just sat, hands folded, breathing slow. The door at the front of the room opened, and Aizawa walked in like he already hated everyone there. Sleeping bag over one shoulder. Eyes half-lidded. Presence immediately crushing the noise level. Quiet. The room didn't fully listen. Aizawa sighed once, then stared. That did it. Silence slammed down hard. He scanned the room, eyes dragging over every face until they stopped, briefly, on Izuku. The fog user hadn't moved an inch. Aizawa spoke again, voice flat. "For the record," he said, "this is what sitting quietly looks like." A few heads turned. Aizawa didn't point, didn't name him, didn't need to. The misty kid's been seated for 2 minutes without making a sound. Aizawa continued. "Take notes. Izuku didn't react. His fog didn't even twitch. Aizawa turned back to the front as if nothing had happened. Welcome to the written portion of UAS entrance exam. You'll be tested on basic academics, situational reasoning, and hero ethics. If you can't read instructions or think under pressure, you don't belong here. The side doors opened. Ectoplasm's clones entered in clean lines, each carrying stacks of exam packets. They moved efficiently, silent except for the soft sound of paper hitting desks. One stopped in front of Izuku and placed the test down. Izuku nodded once in thanks. The clone vanished. Aizawa leaned against the podium. You have 60 minutes. No talking. No quirks. No excuses. He glanced across the room one more time. Begin. Pages flipped. Pens moved. Anxiety crept back in. Izuku picked up his pencil and started reading. Calm. Focused. Exactly where he was supposed to be. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't luck. He had earned this seat. Izuku had studied for this. A lot. Most nights, actually. Sitting at the table with Kyoko while she half listened to music and half quizzed him, correcting answers between songs and calling him an idiot whenever he overthought something obvious. It helped. By the time he was sitting in the exam room, pencil moving across the page, it felt familiar instead of scary. He read each question carefully and answered without rushing. A couple of the scenario questions made him pause, but he'd gone over stuff like that with Kyoko enough times that the answers came naturally. When he finished, he checked his work once and didn't touch it again. When the timer finally buzzed, the room filled with groans and muttered swearing. Aizawa didn't react. Time. Pencils down. Izuku set his pencil on the desk and leaned back slightly. His fog stayed calm and thin, barely noticeable. He felt fine. Not perfect, but good enough. Ectoplasm's clones moved through the rows collecting exams. One took his paper and vanished without comment. Aizawa straightened. All right. Everyone up. You're heading to the auditorium for instructions on the practical portion. Chairs scraped. People stood, stretching arms and complaining to each other. That test was bullshit. I definitely screwed up the ethics section. Why the hell was there math? Izuku moved with the group into the hallway. It was loud now, nerves turning into restless energy. He glanced around out of habit, knowing Kyoko was in a different room but still hoping to spot her. He didn't. Still, thinking about her taking the same test at the same time made him feel steadier. They were ready for this. The auditorium doors were already open. Everyone filed in and took seats, the room filling fast. Izuku sat down and rested his hands on his knees, eyes forward. The lights dimmed slightly, and a familiar voice boomed through the auditorium before anyone even reached the podium. Alright, examinees, let's wake it up in here. Present MIC slid onto the stage with his usual over-the-top energy. MIC already in hand like this was a concert instead of an entrance exam. A few people jumped. A few others groaned. Izuku sat still and listened. Present MIC grinned wide. You've all survived the written portion. Nice job not melting under pressure. Now let's talk about the fun part. The physical exam. A screen lit up behind him, showing footage of large mock city blocks and mechanical enemies roaming the streets. These are faux villain bots, Present MIC continued. They are designed to simulate combat situations. You take them down, you earn points. Easy math. The screen shifted, showing different robots labeled with point values. 1-pointer, 2-pointer, 3-pointer, each worth exactly what they sound like. Bigger bot, more points. You disable M, wreck M, outplay M, however you want. Just don't kill anyone. Please. A few people laughed. Present MIC leaned on the podium. Now, before you all start thinking this is just a smash fest, listen up. Not every robot is meant to be defeated. The screen changed again. A massive robot filled the display. Gasps rippled through the auditorium. This lovely disaster is the 0-pointer, Present MIC said cheerfully. Worth 0 points. Zilch. Nada. It exists for one reason. He snapped his fingers. To be an obstacle. The footage showed students running, dodging, and getting thrown aside. You do not get points for taking it down. You're not expected to fight it. If you try and get flattened, That's on you. Izuku watched carefully, eyes narrowing slightly. His fog stayed calm, but his mind was already mapping angles. Distances, escape routes. Present MIC continued. Your goal is simple: own as many villain points as possible within the time limit. How you do that is up to you. Strategy, teamwork, speed, rescue instincts. We're watching all of it. He pointed toward the audience. And remember, this is UA. We don't just care about how hard you hit. We care about how you think. Izuku shifted slightly in his seat. This wasn't just about power. This was about judgment. Present MIC flashed a grin. Any questions? No. Good. You'll be transported to your testing zone shortly. Stretch, hydrate, and try not to puke. Transition. Izuku stood in front of Gate D, rolling his shoulders and flexing his hands while the countdown ticked down in his head. His fog stayed tight, controlled, barely visible. Around him, other applicants bounced on their heels or stared straight ahead like they were about to charge into a war. He kept thinking about the zero-pointer. You never did anything simple. If they said it was an obstacle, it wouldn't just wander around slowly smashing buildings. It would show up at the worst possible moment, force bad decisions, punish panic. He didn't plan to fight it, but he did plan to be ready to move the second it appeared. He glanced sideways once, instinctively, wishing Kyoka was standing nearby with her arms crossed and that confident look on her face. Different gates, different zones. No choice but to deal with it. He exhaled slowly. The massive metal gate in front of him began to rise, gears grinding loud enough to vibrate the ground. Beyond it waited a mock city, streets, buildings, shadows, and the faint mechanical movement of bots already roaming. Present MIC's voice blasted over the speakers. Begin. Izuku didn't run. He stepped forward and vanished. A portal snapped open beneath him, and he dropped through it, immediately shooting out of another one beyond the gate at full speed. The instant his boots hit pavement, he was already moving. A faux villain bot turned its head. Izuku punched. The strike disappeared into a portal inches from his fist and reappeared from another one embedded in the bot's torso. Warp gate smash. The machine caved inward and collapsed in a shower of sparks. Izuku didn't slow down. He opened another portal mid-step, shot himself sideways across the street, and came out behind two more bots. His arm blurred, portals stacking for range and angle. One bot went down. Then another. Metal hit the ground hard. Izuku kept moving, fog trailing behind him like a sharp-edged wake as he cleared the street fast and clean. Transition. Up in the observation room. The noise level was the exact opposite of the battlefield below. Monitors lined the walls, each one showing a different testing zone. Faculty members leaned on railings, sat on desks, or stood with arms crossed, watching applicants scramble, fight, or immediately eat pavement. One screen in particular had gathered a crowd. Is that him again? Present MIC said, leaning closer. Gate D, yeah, that's Fog Boy. That nickname is your fault, Midnight replied lazily from her seat. Actually, no, that's Kyoka's fault. On the screen, Izuku vanished through a portal and reappeared behind a bot, dropping it with a single clean strike before moving on without breaking stride. Aizawa watched silently, eyes sharp. There's not wasting movement. No hesitation, Midnight added. No overcommitting either. Is choosing angles instead of charging. Present MIC grinned. Kids fighting like has already done this 100 times. Another monitor flashed to Kyoka's zone. She slid across broken pavement, earphone jack snapping forward and punching clean through a bot's armor. Sparks flew as it dropped. Oh ho ho, Present MIC said. And there's the spunky Uzi. That one's also her fault, Midnight said. She leaned into it. Kyoka ducked an attack, sent her earjack straight through another machine, then yanked herself forward using the cables like grappling lines. Confidence, Midnight said. No fear. She knows exactly what she's capable of. Aizawa glanced between the two screens. They trained together. You can tell, Midnight replied. Their movement styles complement each other even when they're not in the same zone. At the center of the room, Nezu stood quietly on a raised console, hands folded, eyes flicking between feeds. He paused on Izuku's screen a moment longer than the others. Interesting, Nezu said. Everyone went quiet. When Nezu spoke like that, it meant something. The boy isn't just reacting, Nezu continued. He's planning several moves ahead. Mapping the area, predicting bot routes, conserving energy. His quirk isn't doing the thinking for him. Present MIC tilted his head. You're saying he's smart. Nezu smiled. Very. Aizawa snorted. Oboro would have run headfirst into the biggest robot he could find. Nezu chuckled softly. Yes, this is a significant deviation. On the monitor, Izuku abruptly changed direction, avoiding an ambush before it happened, then vanished through a portal and reappeared on a rooftop, already lining up his next move. Nezu's smile widened just a little. Instinct plus intelligence. That combination is rare. Midnight crossed her arms. They really are something, aren't they? Aizawa didn't answer, but his eyes never left the screens. Safe to say, among the chaos of exploding bots and panicking applicants, two names had already settled into the room like they belonged there. Transition. Izuku brushed the dust off his hands and slowed his breathing. Broken bots littered the street behind him, sparks popping and fading out. He didn't look back. He'd done enough. More than enough. His fog stayed calm, thin, like it was already settling down. Then the ground shook. Not a small tremor. Not a passing vibration. The kind that rattled windows and made loose rubble hop. Izuku turned just as the shadow swallowed the street. The 0 point arose between the buildings, metal grinding, joints screaming as it straightened to its full height. Its red sensors flicked on one by one, bathing the street in warning light. Each step cracked asphalt and sent chunks of concrete sliding. Izuku didn't panic. He watched. He tracked how it moved, how its weight shifted, how the buildings around it started to fracture just from proximity. He could already see what would happen if it kept walking: collapsed walls, falling debris, someone getting crushed because they were too slow to move. He wasn't going to fight it, but he wasn't going to let it rampage either. Izuku rolled his shoulders once and exhaled through his nose. His fog thickened, wrapping close around his body like it was bracing with him. He raised one hand and opened a portal low to the ground, then another farther back, lining them up perfectly. He took off. He launched himself through the first portal and came out the second at insane speed, boots barely touching the ground before he tucked his arms in and curled tight. His body rotated mid-air as he opened a third portal directly in front of him. The fog snapped inward. It compressed, hardened. His mist darkened and packed around him, forming a dense shell as he turned himself into a human projectile. Warp gate cannon. Izuku shot forward, the air cracking around him as he tore through space and slammed straight into the 0-pointer's chest. Metal screamed. Plates buckled inward as he punched through the outer armor and vanished inside the machine. For half a second, the robot froze. Then its chest cavity detonated in a shower of sparks and smoke as Izuku tore through the internal power system, bursting out the other side in a cloud of mist and debris. The 0-pointer staggered. Its lights flickered. Its massive frame leaned forward and collapsed. The impact thundered through the test zone, dust billowing high into the air as the giant robot slammed into the street and went dead. Izuku rolled across the pavement and came to a stop on one knee, fog peeling away from his body in slow waves. He stayed there for a moment, breathing hard, shoulders rising and falling. He looked up at the fallen machine. Then he stood, adjusted his stance, and turned away as sirens signaled the end of the exam. He didn't say a word. The sirens signaled the end of the exam, and the zones slowly powered down. Staff herded applicants back toward the exit gates, some limping, some exhausted, some still talking a mile a minute about what they'd just done. Izuku walked out of UA's gates with steady steps, fog light and controlled around his shoulders. His body felt it now, the strain from that last move, but he kept it to himself. His eyes scanned automatically. Then he saw her. Kyoko was leaning against a fence post just outside the gate, arms crossed, pretending not to look like she'd been scanning every single person who walked out. The second their eyes met, she pushed off the post and walked over. "Well," she asked, trying to sound casual and failing. Izuku's mist puffed outward in a quick burst of excitement. He made a quick punching motion, then mimed himself shooting forward like a rocket, then slapped his chest and pointed outward like something had exploded. Kyoka blinked. You did something reckless, didn't you? Izuku tilted his head, then nodded once. She squinted at him. How reckless? He held his hands wide, then mimed a giant shape towering over him. Kyoka's eyes widened. You didn't. Izuku nodded again. Fog boy, you didn't go after the zero-pointer. He tapped his chest once and gave a small shrug. Kyoka dragged a hand down her face, then let out a short laugh. You absolute idiot. He hummed, proud. She stepped closer. Did it work? Izuku's fog swirled confidently. He mimed blasting through something, then gave a thumbs up. Kyoka stayed at him for a beat. You blew through it. He nodded. Kyoka let out a breathy laugh and shoved his shoulder lightly. You're insane. I love it. He straightened slightly at that, eyes glowing brighter. She crossed her arms again. I did fine too. Racked up points. Pierced through a bunch of butts like butter. Izuku nodded approvingly. Oh, and, she added, rolling her eyes, there was this dunce with yellow hair and a black streak shaped like a lightning bolt. Wouldn't shut up. Izuku froze. Kyoka smirked slightly. He kept trying to hit on me. Loud, jittery, kinda stupid. Izuku's fog tightened immediately. He stepped closer without thinking, mist curling around her waist and tugging her in against him. Kyoka blinked, then looked up at him. Oh. He huffed quietly, eyes narrowing just a little. She laughed. Are you jealous? His fog puffed again, sharper this time. Kyoka snorted. Wow, didn't know Fog Boy had that in him. He pulled her a little closer, mist wrapping around her like a subtle barrier. She leaned into him on purpose now, amused. Relax. I forgot his name already. I only remember the dumb hair. Izuku's grip didn't loosen. Kyoka tilted her head up at him. You're kinda cute when you get possessive, you know that. His mist flayed in embarrassment. She reached up and flicked his forehead lightly. You've got nothing to worry about. I'm here with you, aren't I? Izuku's fog softened instantly, warmth replacing tension. Kyoka smirked. Besides, if anyone tries anything again, I'll handle it. Or you'll teleport them into a trash can. His eyes brightened at that idea. She laughed and slipped her hand into his. Come on, hero. Let's go home. Transition. A couple days passed after the exam. No letter. No call. No email. Just waiting. Which meant either spiraling into overthinking or distracting themselves. They chose distraction. Izuku and Kyoka were downtown, wandering through a shopping street that was way too crowded for a weekday afternoon. It wasn't officially labeled a date, but considering they were holding hands and deliberately walking slower than necessary, it pretty much was. Stop checking your phone, Kyoka said, sipping from a can soda she'd bought from a vending machine. If the results are in, you'll know. Izuku slid his phone back into his pocket, mist puffing sheepishly. They passed a music store, then a clothing boutique, then a tiny accessory shop with a glass display full of necklaces and rings. Kyoka paused. Izuku noticed immediately. She leaned closer to the display window. Oh, that's kinda cute. Inside the case was a small silver necklace with a tiny guitar charm. Simple, clean, not flashy. Izuku stepped inside without saying anything. Kyoka blinked. Wait, what are you doing? He pointed at the necklace. The shop clerk took it out and placed it on the counter. Kyoka folded her arms. Izuku, you don't have to. He paid anyway. Outside the shop, he handed it to her carefully. Kyoka stayed at it for a second. You're serious? He nodded once. She looked at the charm again, thumb brushing over the tiny keys. It's actually perfect. Izuku's eyes brightened. She rolled her eyes slightly, but she was smiling. Turn around. He did. Kyoka stepped closer and fastened it around her neck. The silver caught the sunlight just right. She stepped back and tilted her head. How does it look? Izuku gave her a firm thumbs up. DMN right, she said, adjusting it proudly. Now I have official proof my boyfriend has taste. His mist warmed noticeably. After that, they grabbed coffee from a corner cafe. Kyoko ordered something sweet and complicated. Izuku got something simple. They sat outside under an umbrella, watching people pass by. Kyoko rested her chin in her hand. You nervous? Izuku paused, then gave a small nod. Yeah, she admitted. Same. She glanced at him sideways. But we did good. You literally blew through a skyscraper robot. He huffed softly. She smirked, and I stabbed mine until it begged for mercy. They sat in comfortable silence for a bit, sipping their drinks. A breeze lifted Kyoko's hair slightly. The guitar charm shifted against her collarbone. Izuku reached over and lightly tapped it. She looked down at it, then at him. I'm keeping this forever, you know. He didn't say anything. He just laced his fingers through hers again. Results would come when they came. For now, it was just the two of them, coffee cups in hand, pretending they weren't checking the calendar every 5 minutes. Transition. By the time Izuku and Kyoko made it back to UA, the sky had turned a warm orange. The campus felt quieter in the evening, controlled and secure like always. Izuku walked them up to the dorm and into the building, Miss trailing lazily behind him. The elevator doors opened to the penthouse floor, and the second they stepped inside, there they are. Izuku blinked. The living room was full. Inko stood near the kitchen island, apron still on. Mikajiro was beside her, arms crossed but smiling. Aizawa leaned against the wall like he'd rather be anywhere else but clearly wasn't leaving. Present MIC was practically vibrating with excitement. MidoriIkaru lounged on the couch, legs crossed, and Nezu stood on the coffee table like he owned the place. Kyoko froze mid-step. What the hell? Izuku's miss puffed in surprise. Inko clasped her hands. We were waiting. Mika gave her daughter a look. Took you long enough. Present MIC threw his arms wide. Congrats, future heroes. Izuku's eyes widened. Kyoko stared at them. Wait, don't tell me. Nezu adjusted his tie and smiled pleasantly. You both received your acceptance letters approximately 3 hours ago. Kyoko's jaw dropped. You're kidding. Aizawa sighed. You passed. Izuku went completely still. Then his mist exploded upward in a bright, warm burst. Kyoko grabbed his arm. We passed. We actually passed. Present MIC laughed. You two crushed it. Written scores solid. Practical performance impressive. 0-pointer stunt was bold. Aizawa gave Izuku a pointed look. Reckless. Nezu tilted his head. Effective. Izuku looked from face to face, chest rising and falling faster now. Inko stepped forward and pulled him into a tight hug. I'm so proud of you. Mika grabbed Kyoko and squeezed her just as hard. You did it. Kyoko buried her face in her mom's shoulder for a second before pulling back, grinning. DMN right I did. Midoriya stewed and stretched. All right, emotional moment over. Where's the food? Inko laughed and gestured toward the kitchen. The counters were covered. Real food. Not snacks. Not takeout. A full spread. Tempura, curry, rice, grilled fish, desserts neatly arranged like she'd been planning this for days. Izuku blinked at it. I might have started cooking before the letters came, Inko admitted, smiling. Just in case. Present MIC clapped him on the back. Welcome to UA, Fog Boy. Kyoko smirked. And Spunky Uzi. Aizawa rubbed his temple. We are not calling her that on record. Nezu chuckled. Izuku stood there for a second longer, looking at the people in the room. Family, mentors, friends, all smiling at him like this was the most obvious outcome in the world. He exhaled slowly. Then he stepped over to Kyoko and bumped his shoulder against hers. She grinned. Told you. They moved toward the table together as everyone started grabbing plates, talking over each other, laughing. Transition. The apartment had gone quiet. Plates were stacked in the sink. Half-finished drinks sat forgotten on the counter. Present MIC was snoring on the couch with one arm hanging off the side. Midoriya had claimed the recliner and knocked out almost instantly. Inko had drifted off at the table after insisting she was just resting her eyes. Aizawa had left earlier with a tired wave. Nezu excused himself politely. Mika had hugged Kyoko one last time before heading out. Now it was just the hum of the building systems and the city lights beyond the windows. Izuku stood near the balcony door, looking out at campus for a moment, fog drifting lazily around him. Kyoka walked up behind him and bumped his shoulder lightly. "You good?" He turned toward her and nodded. She smiled, softer than usual. "You were kind of glowing in there." He gave a small hum. She stepped closer, lowering her voice even though everyone else was dead asleep. "You did great today. I'm proud of you." His mist warmed at that. She reached up and tugged lightly at the collar of his shirt. "Come on." They slipped quietly down the hallway toward his room, closing the door gently behind them. The space felt different tonight. Smaller, warmer. Kyoka sat on the edge of his bed and kicked off her shoes. "We're really in," she said, almost to herself. Izuku leaned against the wall for a second, watching her. She looked up at him. "What?" He stepped forward. Slowly, Kyoka tilted her head slightly. "You're staring." He didn't look away. She smirked faintly. "You still thinking about that idiot from the exam?" His fog tightened just a little. Kyoka laughed quietly. "Relax." She reached for him first this time, pulling him down by the front of his shirt until he was standing between her knees. "You don't have to get jealous every time someone looks at me." His mist curled around her waist instinctively. She looked up at him, eyes softer now. "You know I'm yours." He leaned down and kissed her. Slow at first, then deeper. Kyoka's hands slid up his back as she kissed him back without hesitation. His fog thickened around them, dimming the light in the room slightly, wrapping around her shoulders like a second layer of warmth. She pulled back just enough to look at him. "Still doing that thing?" He blinked. She smiled a little. "The tongue." He hesitated for half a second, then leaned back in. The kiss changed. Kyoka's breath caught softly against his mouth when his long, smooth tongue brushed along hers, flexible and deliberate. It was strange the first time, but now she knew what to expect. And she liked it. Her fingers tightened in his shirt as she kissed him harder, more confident. He responded immediately, pressing closer, his hand steady at her waist. She broke the kiss just long enough to whisper, "You're such a freak." There was no insult in it, only heat. Izuku's eyes glowed brighter in the dim room. Kyoka smiled against his mouth as she pulled him down with her onto the bed, the world outside forgotten for a while. Thank you for joining us on this journey through What If Hero Deku Had Warp Gate Quirk. We hope you found it as captivating as we did. A big thank you to MidoriIkaru for creating such an engaging story. Don't forget to visit their profile on Wattpad for more fantastic works. The link is in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Zen and Fanfics for more intriguing explorations into fan fiction and fantasy. Your support helps us create more content like this, and we love hearing your thoughts and suggestions in the comments section. See you soon in the next video.